But he came straight out and said, "Here, get this down here." And I said, "I don't drink anymore, John." He said, "You what?" I said, "I don't drink anymore." So I can't drink. It completely compromised all aspects of my life. And I remember him looking at me just really bizarrely. You'd seen this guy at the end of the bar, literally every night of the week, drinking whatever was going, and moving on into the bars at night. And a couple of days later, I left York. So I'd been there for 7 years. I'd made a lot of friends. I was 5 years into this job, of course, university. It's there, my ex-partner. But I just left it all overnight. So I left my flat. I didn't say goodbye to anybody. I just came back to Cumbria. And for the first time, put on my personal Facebook page at the time what I've been going through and what I've been keeping secret now for the last 12 years.
Hey, it's Chris here from Adventure Solos, where we help people in their 30s, 40s and 50s to rediscover themselves and meet new people. In this episode, we're speaking to Harrison. Harrison has cooked on a hillside for Dame Mary Berry and also now has his own cookbook called Cookout. Harrison's been on quite a journey along the way though, including battling depression and alcoholism. So join us in this chat as we follow him on his journey and find out some of his secrets along the way. Oh, and before we forget, please also consider supporting us with a monthly pledge over on Patreon. You can find the details of that in the show notes below. And remember, if you'd like to find out more about Adventure Solos events, visit adventuresolos.com. That's adventuresolos.com, where you're very welcome to stay in touch by joining the mailing list. So adventuresolos.com and enter your details to sign up to the mailing list. Today we're chatting to Harrison Ward, also known as Fell Foodie. You live in Ambleside in the Lake District, so northwest England. I think probably just hand over to you, Harrison, and let you do the hard work of introducing yourself, if that's all right. And yeah, tell us a bit about who you are and why we might be chatting to you today.
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you for having me first off. And I guess my name is Harrison Ward. I'm also known as the Fell Foodie. In this part of the world, we tend to call the hills fells. And it was really merging two passions of sort of hiking and cooking for me, heading into the fells. And these days, I'm probably best known for trying to recreate, I suppose, restaurant-style meals up on the top of the mountaintops with a little camp stove, basically showing what is possible on minimal equipment. And the fact we don't have to really sacrifice what we eat when we go out and about for a little micro-adventure. So it's been something I've been sharing online for the last sort of 5 years or so. And it's led to multiple sort of publications, a few times in the press, and recently my debut book coming out as well. So it's something that was very much a hobby at the start, really calls from quite a major life change that I'm sure we'll go into. Thank you, Chris. There you go. He's on form with the props. And yeah, one of those. So again, sharing with the guys of Fell Foodie on multiple platforms. And hopefully that's why I'm here today.
So we'll definitely chat about the book. As you say, I've got a copy here and was lucky enough to be invited to your book launch, 6-8 weeks ago, something like that. But yeah, we should probably start at the start, if that's all right. Would you be happy sort of telling us a bit about, I guess, yourself, your life, like where did you grow up? We touched on that a bit before. But yeah, what have you got siblings? What's family life like? What was life like for Harrison growing up?
That's it. Back to the dawn of time for Harrison. Okay, no
problem. We like to throw people in at the deep end, so yeah, you're no exception.
Well, absolutely. Well, I didn't realise we were recording at first, so you definitely have done. So that's all good. But these days, I'm based obviously in Ambleside in the Lake District, but originally I was from a bit further north. So I'm just outside Carlisle on Hadrian's Wall, the border to Scotland, where I grew up and where I sort of spent my time here. So my mum's still up this way, hence why I'm here at the moment for the Christmas time festivities. But I suppose in life up here, I mean, I was so close to the Lake District and always grown up in quite a rural area. But these days, I'm quite well known for using the outdoors quite regularly, quite known in maybe the outdoor space as well. But back then, I suppose I wasn't using it at all, really. It maybe be something I took for granted. I was in this sort of area, so it might be playing with my mates down in the woods or various bits, or going for a bike ride and certain things, but didn't really utilise it as a sole focus for going, let's go outdoors or taking a journey out somewhere. And certainly not the Lake District either. It was so close and on the doorstep, but somewhere that I really wouldn't embrace at all. It would be perhaps the odd school trip or pop into Keswick for a day trip with the family. But home life was all grand. Yeah, it was my mum and my sister that I lived with. My mum and dad had split up from quite a young age, but a strong relationship there as well. But my dad lives further down south, Hampshire way, but these days Devon way. So he's improved slightly on where we were visiting previously, out the rat run of London. But I suppose life, for me, just kind of took a bit of a strange turn, sort of through puberty, really. It was something that I was quite a happy-go-lucky, quite, happy child, sort of bits in there, plenty of friends and plenty of good times at school. And then all of a sudden, really overnight, I found myself really struggling with my own sense of purpose and existence, really. And I guess very demotivated activities I previously enjoyed were no longer providing any joy. And really, it was something that I put on a brave face each day, I guess, to try and not bring people down with what I was struggling with internally, when each day I was actually completely battering myself apart, really. I guess very self-critical. And what I later found out to be the start of really my battle with clinical depression, but this was from 13 onwards, literally an overnight thing, started really going from someone that didn't really have a place in the world, didn't think they had a place in this world anyway.
Yeah. And so did you see, I guess I'm thinking, you're 13, something like that, you're at school. Did this affect your schoolwork? Did it affect your friendship groups? How did that sort of show itself, or was it just an internal?
I'd like to say it didn't affect those things there. I suppose it's something that, 13, you're kind of just going into secondary school or high school then anyway. So you haven't noticed anything particularly in terms of grades changing or bits in there. But I think it was something that I lived with most days, but kind of really didn't speak out about this at all. Didn't tell any family, didn't tell any friends. Really not wanting to be that person that was, I suppose, bringing the conversation down anyway, or perhaps fearing judgment for what I was going through. And also then I think as well, you didn't really know what it was. You just felt as if all of a sudden this became normality and this became day to day. So you kind of didn't really question it and just felt the fact that, it wasn't why is this happening to me? It was kind of going, well, this isn't great. I don't feel brilliant, but there's one way to go through this, and it's to carry on, really, or just this is what I've got to live with now. It's my cross to bear. But I didn't think about speaking out, I think. I don't know if that's because society was more of, keep calm, carry on. I suppose it was quite sort of blokes being quite, I suppose, hard and not exposing themselves to various things. So it was something that I didn't feel I had any external role models, perhaps, either, in terms of these days you see a lot more on the internet, celebrities and sportsmen and stuff talking out perhaps about their mental health or issues they go for very openly. But at the time, growing up then, it was something that I didn't really know what was happening. It just felt as if perhaps this was the change and I wasn't very accustomed to it.
What were you actually feeling, Harrison, at that point?
Things that previously brought you joy, I think, just didn't feel the same as what they did before. Nothing really seemed to rise you out from just wallowing, I guess, a lot of the time. You felt as if you were always quite low and on the ground and having to really act up or put a mask on to really showcase feelings of maybe happiness, when really I felt quite numb emotionally. Didn't really know what my future was going to hold, didn't have any plans ahead. There was times where, again, I was battling with suicidal ideations, a lot of insecurity, body image-wise, and who I was myself, very critical, overthinking, just constantly having an aspect on your shoulder, just talking you down all the time, and the actions you did as well, sort of going, well, why have you done that? Why was this? And there wasn't an anxiety issue to it. I don't think I've been someone that's ever suffered from that really much. I'm still sort of someone that carried on doing. I was working at the time as well, worked from quite a young age in the hospitality trade and carried on my studies along the side. But internally, I felt as if I was constantly playing a character really out and about. And even perhaps in family life too, it didn't really feel as if something that I could get a grasp on or really understand until slightly later on in my adolescence.
So kind of disassociative and sort of a bit apathetic.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it was something that I didn't really. You didn't really feel as if you had your place in the world. I don't know. I didn't feel as if where were you going, or really questioning perhaps normal aspects of life and what was the pointlessness of them half the time, and bits to go on, and had no aspirations. I had no goals. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I felt as if I just followed a path that was what maybe society deemed was the path to follow at the time. It was very much a coaster, I guess, at the time as well. I kind of just got through. I ghosted through life in a way, and subsequently later in life, as we'll get onto in a second, even more so. I felt as if I was just literally existing each day. I was kind of waking up and then just going through the motions. I wasn't really trying to push the boundaries too far, because really myself, I didn't really want to. It was a tough one, really. It was something that still, I wouldn't say I'm cured from this day and age. It's kind of something that I still go through periods of and learn to manage it a lot better. But if I'm going from, again, that kind of carefree child to just overnight all of a sudden having these feelings, and it was quite really a quick learning curve, I guess, for myself of what I was, where my place was and what future was going to hold for me.
Yeah, sounds almost confusing, doesn't it?
I think very much. I mean, there's a lot of things going on at that time, isn't there, in your life as well? Of course, there's so much change going on as well in terms of perhaps even, socially, education-wise, your movement into adolescence, into adulthood as well, and really not knowing where you fit along that path is quite a bizarre one, I guess, and trying to work out what you are, but also feeling very guilty as well. So I felt as if I didn't really have a place to feel like this. I felt as if I was in quite a lucky position, really. I mean, I was looking at my mum had a nice house to go back to. Again, I was in school and we always had food on the table, sort of thing. My mum worked very hard. She was a nurse in the infirmary, and again, and I was living in a beautiful area, a beautiful part of the world. Yeah, I didn't really see it that way. I didn't really appreciate perhaps what was on my doorstep, very complacent to that. So I did feel very guilty for the fact that what have I got to worry about as well, which I think often sometimes you do with perhaps these mental health ailments as well, because there's people in far worse positions, and you think, well, what have I really got to moan about? Which again, perhaps maybe fuels that ammunition for the other side of the argument, perhaps still creating that stigma in saying, well, just get on with it, sort of thing. So it was two contrasting viewpoints, I guess, that you're going in your own head that overnight became a bit of an internal battle.
Yeah. Did you get on well with your sister? Did you ever? It sounds like you didn't really externalize it at all. Look, he's smiling. Go on, is there a story? I'll let you answer that question.
I don't have any particular stories as such. I think we've always just been quite chalk and cheese, me and my sister. I mean, my sister and I, perhaps I'll be grammatically correct there. But yeah, these day and age, we get on quite well. I mean, I'm sure she probably won't listen to this. She's maybe listened to a few in the past, but we're just very different characters, I think, in terms of I've been quite a laid back character, quite sort of maybe live life a lot through humour, perhaps even sort of lifting those around me out of certain bits through sort of not taking things too seriously. And she's maybe perhaps the opposite, quite quick to be quite serious in various bits on there, but but a very caring person as well. She'd always go out away for somebody else. So again, we don't not get on, but I think sometimes we can grind each other up the wrong way, shall we say.
It's funny that you mentioned sense of humour for a few reasons. I guess one is you came on the Windermere Weekend probably 2.5, if not 3.5 years ago. And that's what I remember, very dry, quick, witty sense of humour. I really like that. So that does stand out for me. You mentioned before also, though, almost sort of playing and acting a character. And I've also been reading the Matthew Perry book, as in Chandler from Friends book. I've just got a few pages of that left. And I guess he sort of used humour as, I don't know. I mean, it's part of his character, obviously, but maybe even a mask at some points. Does that ring true for you or not?
I think I could certainly see that point. Yeah, I think it was something that Robin Williams also went through, didn't he? The actor who, when he sadly lost his own life, and kind of someone that people didn't really see that part of him because he was always playing that quite jovial, uplifting, trying to make people feel great. But I guess that's sometimes part of it, because I think when you know what you're going through and battling internally, you don't want anybody else to feel like that, perhaps. So you try and help other people out of that mire, even where their perhaps time is maybe much more day-to-day issues and things. So I think certainly there's been an aspect to that. I mean, not so much in terms of being the class clown at school type thing, but I think there is maybe quite a laid-back attitude to life at times, I think, and really seeing perhaps, the insignificance of small things and trying to play up the humour side of it sometimes, of going, well, this is it, we battle on, don't we? And a bit of dry wit in there. But there has been, I think, for myself, using it as a guard as well. I think that's definitely something I have done in the past. And I think wearing that mask is something that I have probably continue to do at times, really. Days when you're not feeling too good, perhaps it's something that I probably speak about as something not to do, to sort of speak out a lot these days and sort of reach out to someone, but perhaps sometimes actually tasting my own medicine is not always it's not always the way I am. But certainly, yeah, humour, I think, is something that I try to use for both positive sides, myself and for other people.
So go on, we'll let you continue. So sort of this all kicked in and things changed a little bit for you, maybe around puberty, 13. So how long did you stay at school, and where did things go from there?
Yeah, so I stayed. I was through school into after 16. So I did sixth form studies there for my A levels. Went on to university in the end, into York as well. So I followed that path that I felt society was pushing me towards. I was academically quite strong, so I felt as if I had to go down those paths, but also never really felt as if I was applying myself. I didn't really feel as if what is the point of this? Where is this going? I was quite a practical thinker, I guess. So I worked a lot, said, in the pub trade from early on, from 13 onwards, washing pots, prep chefing, waiting on, And that became much more of a model that I could understand the remit of. It was kind of, there's a job to do, there's an action in hand, there's a cash transaction for my time. I understood that principle a lot more than perhaps this ethereal side of I could just do some theoretical study, never apply it physically, but someone's going to take that bit of paper in the future and go, he knows what he's doing, so he can do this now and apply it. And I was always questioning really, well, it's like, yes, have the knowledge is definitely there, but you need to have a bit of practical knowledge as well, or the work-life experience. So I struggled with those bits about where I was going in life quite a bit, but continued on the path because it felt like the path that was natural to me at that point. So carried on my work and my studies, but still battling internally to myself. And around 18, I began working behind the bar in a local pub in my local town here. And that, I suppose, was a very much a different rite of passage in a way, a different culture I was being experienced to. So obviously here in the UK, a lot of our life revolves around sort of alcohol around 18, that coming of age type story. And the pub was very much a traditional aspect of that. And some of that I enjoyed being quite a lot of the time. I enjoyed the social experience of being in there from both sides. But now I was coming into this world of adulthood, there was slightly different things that became available, I suppose. And I wasn't someone that was, drinking a bottle of cider down the park or behind the bike shed at various times. But in this environment, all of a sudden now, it became very much a bit of a social hub for me. And some of that I quite enjoyed the sensation of. I enjoyed the idea of not being stuck in my own four walls, being at home, perhaps in my own thoughts, my own head. I was still playing a bit of sport at the time as well. And that tended to be after the sport finished. We all gathered afterwards for perhaps, a bit of a social debrief, shall we say, sort of a few drinks getting spilled in various bits. And also found the fact that alcohol was providing this sensation for me internally that was almost alleviating the darker thoughts in my mind. So it was kind of shutting those off and taking me back to really that blank canvas that I was beforehand. So I really felt as if it was relieving me from some of those afflictions. Now, of course, that in itself becomes a sensation that I wanted more and more of. And as time went on, we're very early on, 18, not drinking at all before that, my tolerance was extremely low. But it went to a point that obviously this began to build further and further. And that feeling of euphoria that I was getting from the drink, I suppose, became further and further away and harder to reach. So by really 19, when I moved away for university, I went there a year late, did some extra studies at college. Again, not really sure what I wanted to do in life. So I was often chopping and changing my studies quite a bit there, going, what path am I going to go on? Because it felt very much like you were pressured into this situation of what you're going to choose to do for the next 40 years. And I didn't know what I was going to do for the next 40 hours. So it was a bizarre one. But that tolerance was now quite increased quite heavily. And I was drinking most days by the time I moved away to York for university and was known as quite someone that could hold the drink quite well. Again, quite a rugby lad build as well. And I suppose there's a bit of bravado in that as a young lad as well, being able to hold your drink and hold your alcohol, especially in the culture of the UK.
You'd mentioned before you were playing sport. Was it just rugby? Is that what you were doing, or were you doing other stuff?
I didn't actually play much rugby. I should have played more rugby. I think I was built for rugby, but I never really embraced. I played football like a game of rugby. That's kind of what I did. So I was known as a tough tackling centre back. And for those that know, I do like the football. There was a centre back for Chelsea called Chopper Harris back in the day in the 70s. And obviously, my name being Harrison, I became Chopper Harrison. So so I played that game a bit like a game of rugby. But otherwise, I played a lot of cricket at the time as well. I liked my hockey in there. So again, a lot of team sports in a way. But when I got out of that cycle, again, more into adulthood, that sort of falls away, unfortunately. And I think those days where you gather with your mates or you do a regular thing on sort of the Wednesday, Thursday night seem to be harder and harder to fit into society, into your life, sorry. So it's moved more into more solo activities, I suppose, as time's gone on. But certainly when I moved away to York, my exercise completely disappeared in all aspects. So I was gymming quite a lot at the time as well. Moved away to York for university. It was very much that, again, rite of passage, that social lubricant, the Freshers Week, everyone coming together, enjoying meeting new people from around the country. And then literally it was pretty much a life of lethargy for the next 6 years for me.
On the alcohol at university, I think it's quite a common story. It's obviously sort of almost part of the culture, isn't it? You go away to university, it's sort of you study and you drink. It certainly used to be like that when I was at university. And I think it's one of these slightly odd things, I think, where perhaps it's a Western thing, where we've made it a cultural norm to just drink. And, if you looked at what young people, I don't know if it's the same these days, but what people are doing at those ages, I mean, a lot of them probably would tick a box as alcoholics. If you just looked at their lifestyle and just ignored the fact that they were students, it's like we're going to give them a badge, you're a student, and then they're drinking. I mean, maybe that's not quite accurate because they maybe don't have a dependence in a technical sense, but they're certainly drinking a lot of alcohol. I certainly drank way too much alcohol at university to the point of blacking out numerous times and quite frankly being an absolute idiot. I just wondered if you could speak on, your experience of that and the culture within which you found yourself drinking.
It's almost kind of like an unregulated initiation in a way, isn't it? It's sort of the way it feels in terms of it's just the path you have to go down, I guess, at that sort of 18, where even sneaking out to the bars and clubs beforehand. I mean, growing up quite rurally as well, it's perhaps a bit easier to do so in this element as well. But going away to university, I certainly found that it was the hubs or the student union or the pubs there, or the clubs were where you were going to meet new people. You were all coming together. You were all now generally away from home for the first time. You didn't know anybody who was there. So it felt as if that was the social lubricant for creating these new relationships, which, as you say, I think for some, it was that all the nights revolved around it in terms of perhaps it was very much £1 night at certain bars where the beers were really cheap or there were shots on offer, or you were just constantly going to these cycles and moving bar to bar in different groups to meet different people. So, and although there was, I think I never really took any in, and my attendance was very poor from the very start at university, really, because I quite quickly became someone that was much more likely to be seen in the student union than I was in the lecture theatre or the library. So it was kind of, I didn't really embrace any of these social groups, perhaps any of the sporting sectors or the societies that go on. So there may be other ways people get to meet people at university, but for me it was very much revolved around the nightlife, that culture, and I guess perhaps even as well breaking down those barriers slightly when it's meeting new people for the first time. A little bit of drink sometimes breaks down those elements, but as you say, consumption-wise, unit consumption-wise, there'd be many people that would probably come as a red flag on the list. Certainly the NHS, if you look at the units in terms of what you drink per week, that's sort of flagged as a problem. There's, I think a couple of nights a week on sort of maybe the binge drinking culture of club nights would quite quickly put you in that unit bracket of you need some questions asked to you.
How much were you drinking a night, Harrison?
So at this point, I was quite regularly drinking most days, and I was known as a good drinker. And it was kind of being a year older at university too. I felt that was kind of a bit of a badge of honour I wore as well. The fact I could maybe drink a lot of them under the table, and I didn't really embrace the whole. They just drink a lot at home in the bar or in the kitchen at home and buy a lot of spirits for cheap. And I very much enjoyed being out. I enjoyed being around people, so I didn't want to be stuck indoors. And I liked the atmosphere of a pub or a bar, so I became someone that would go quite early on to maybe some of the more traditional pubs in town and chill with some of the old boys in there and hear some of the stories, and enjoyed basically mixing with people from different age groups and different walks of life. So quite often I'd meet people later on in the student day when I've already been out most of the day at this point. So I was regularly sort of again drinking probably in excess of 10 pints most days then. I took a job back up in the hospitality trade quite quickly. Began working behind the bar again there, sort of, I guess, funding my studies really. Again, my mum was single parent in that way, so I didn't have any backing in terms of you just go for university without doing anything. I had to get a job quite quickly to be able to fund, obviously, my rent and bits in there. But that became something that, again, I mentioned before, that transaction of time for money seemed a much more obvious settlement than what was maybe invested in myself going forward. Despite academically being strong enough, I felt as if at this point I needed money to fuel my alcohol, to fuel my rent, to fuel this. I was getting that from my job, where the studies were they seemed more of a hardship. And although I could turn up and just send an essay in last minute and sort of come away with a passing grade, again, coasting, I was very much someone that would rather be in the pub on the social side. So it began to fall by the wayside quite quickly, and things really began to snowball for me personally as well, where those 10 pints a night were now almost, they were doubling in consumption to the excess of 20 pints a day. I was a full-time smoker at this point. I'd ballooned in weight to about 22 stone and was literally running alcohol around my whole life at this point, my sole focus. The minute I got up, literally I'd be cracking a can open in the morning. I was never hungover because I never stopped drinking. I was always just inebriated and literally, as you say, drinking to complete blackout. Originally to sort of stop that those thoughts. And again, still trying to reach that point of euphoria that I got from alcohol, that good, that happy feeling that we get maybe normally after a couple of drinks or so. But for me, that tolerance was so increased now that it took me longer and longer to get to that moment. And often I'd never even reach that point of where I wanted to be. I'd just actually black out, or the bars or pubs would shut before that happened. And now I was living in this environment. I was full-time in the pub. And whether I was behind the bar working or the other side of the bar when I wasn't working, my whole life was revolving around that cycle. And really, yeah, it was a very self-destructive period that went on.
It sounded, you described it before, and it sounded almost nice in the way you kind of said you liked, like, not drinking in the kitchen, for example. You would go out and it was a social lubricant for you, and you'd sit in the pub and hear stories, and the sounds like a positive element to that. But then obviously you've just touched on the sort of blacking out and waking up in the morning and having a can. Like, how quickly did that go from being what sounded like almost a positive in your life and having having the desired effect, if that makes sense, to it becoming self-destructive and a problem?
There was probably signs earlier on. I think even when I was back home in Cumbria, where I think I started going out more regularly. Perhaps, one point in time it was after maybe football on the Friday or a Wednesday night. We'd go and meet at the pub afterwards. That was quite normal. Maybe you'd go out on a Saturday night as well. Again, seen as quite normal. But for me, then I was also then going, well, I want to go out Monday night now as well. I want to go out Tuesday night. And those groups of people weren't going out on those nights because they were like, no, I've got work in the morning, or I've got this on. And where I'd be like, well, I want to go out, so I'll go and meet somebody else. So I was very much a bit of a social nomad in a way. I didn't really have a group that I clung to. And university was the same. As Nat says, when he started, it was like that, very much drinking quite heavily early on. But a lot of people, that fades out as they get into university, and they actually start focusing on the studies a lot more. And by second year, they've kind of got quite a routine. They are doing the studies, they're spending time in the library, and they're probably applying a 40-hour week in the student setting. Whereas for me, I never wanted to sort of leave that side behind and try to work and play just as hard, which obviously doesn't really work out very well. And got basically quite sick of basically friends that were going, right, well, we're going out on Monday. We're going to have Tuesday night off, actually. And I was going, well, I want to go out again. So I found little different groups, and then they go, I don't want to go out again. So then quite quickly I became someone that was just myself. I'd just go along to the pub early doors. When it first opened, sort of 11 o'clock, I'd be going in. There's a couple of the old boys who maybe betting on the horse racing there, the retirees, or guys who were shift workers at the Nestle, the confectionery factory nearby. So they were different cycles. I'd meet them. They'd go home, or they'd go home drunk, or they'd go to work. Some of them after quite a skinful. You then meet the crowd after work, coming after 5 o'clock. They'd come in at 4 or 5 o'clock, having a few drinks after work. So I'd be mingling with them. I was already maybe 6, 7 pints in by this point. I'd drink with them till maybe 9, 10 o'clock. They'd then go home, carry on their lives. I'd then go out and meet the evening crowd, which maybe there's then students again, or the weekend. It was everyone on the way.
When you were sitting there, Harrison, though, when you were sitting there at 4 PM with some old blokes who have got the Ladbrokes slips out, and there's no one your age, and is anything in your head being going, this isn't right, what am I doing here?
At the time, no. I mean, it feels like it should do, shouldn't it? I mean, but again, I suppose because I worked in that environment as well, I was quite used to maybe socialising with that clientele I wouldn't maybe have come across in my day-to-day. And I think it was kind of something that quite quickly I saw the age thing. I didn't see it as a really an issue. I was just like, well, there's still people like me. We're all in adulthood now. So once you got to 18, 19, it was like, what's the difference between that and someone who's maybe retired age? We're still going through the same period of life. We could be work colleagues in another setting. So it felt quite normal. I actually enjoyed the conversation a lot more. So I felt they had a lot more maybe to speak about, a lot more stories in there. I felt almost more on a level in terms of what I wanted to talk about as well. Whereas maybe those who were at university in the first year were quite green and quite fresh and felt as if they weren't very exposed to the world. So I felt as if I didn't have much to relate to on that sort of front. Bizarrely, because again, I was quite old head, young shoulders, I guess, even though I was the same age. But I almost enjoyed that bit more. I'd rather go to the pub in the daytime with the old boys than I would do going to the clubs in the evening with those my own age. It was a bizarre setting, but perhaps that was from the work side of things, or maybe even the rural upbringing, being a peer and coming across more people like that. But it was something that I didn't see as a problem at all to begin with. I just saw something that I fell into that lifestyle quite easily, and also again worked hard as well in the work side of things. So my studies fell by the wayside. I became quite quickly full-time in the trade and worked up to management in the end in the pub trade, where I was kind of known as a landlord in a city centre pub, and was quite a face in that sort of area, known for both sides of the bar, really. So it just felt like quite a natural transition that behind the scenes was kind of helping me as well with my own battles.
What had you been studying at York, or should you have been studying by the sounds of it?
Yeah.
But, and also, when you say students doing 40 hours weeks, I never met any of them, I don't think. I used to try and go to lectures, but I don't think there was 40-hour weeks of studying. But yeah, sorry, what were you studying?
It was maybe just what the registrar said to me once when I had a bit of an appeal moment for my lack of attendance, and they'll go, "We should be in this amount of time." And yeah, by that point, I knew it was all online, so I could just pick it all up on email. So I didn't feel like I needed to have to go in, really. I could have a lie in after a night out and just pick it back up later. But I was studying business at the time, business management. I was studying. Again, a subject I chose purely because I felt that I had the personal traits that might suit it. I didn't particularly want to go into that aspect. I didn't know what I wanted to specialise in. It felt like quite a broad term that sort of covered a bit of a next step on this societal path for me that would perhaps complement some of maybe the personal attributes that I felt I had.
Yeah, I studied business finance. I ended up going into business finance and felt that this whole studying was a complete waste of time. And I sort of resent that in a way, but you had to tick the box at the time. And thankfully, we didn't have to pay hardly anything really compared to what you have to now. So I did come out with some debt, but not huge debts. And yeah, I think it's a bit of a different ballgame now, isn't it? But I also thought you were saying you were 19 when you went, and that felt like quite a big gap almost at the time because everyone else was 18. And I had a very similar experience when I went I had been at boarding school, which I think being away from home and having sort of more choice about, even if not in theory, in practice, you sort of choose when you go to bed and stuff like that. You've made some of those decisions and you're used to that. And then I'd had a year just working in pubs and bars actually and doing surf fire down in Cornwall. So then that extra year, so I was like 19, I'd been away from home for 6 or 7 years and everyone else was, just that 1 year younger, but they're away from home for the first time. And yeah, I think there was a bit of a different mentality. I did notice that gap, so I could relate to that when you said.
Yeah, I think you've just got a bit more life experience under your belt, haven't you? I think whether that came from even aspects, maybe even of growing up with my mum and sister, having to be sort of, I don't know, the traditional maybe man of the house a bit more, a bit younger of age and things, and also working in that environment of just trying to be. I was always known as someone who could talk to anyone, even at a young age. I had to hold a conversation with someone that was a lot older than me quite early on, and it was quite an unusual trait, I guess, for that age. But as time's gone on, it's something that levels out quite a bit. But it's. Yeah, I think quite quickly I just enjoyed that setting, but felt as if those who were also of my age, they just didn't really, they were seeing life in a different way, or weren't seeing maybe the full picture as much and things. And although I've got some great friendships from then as well, it was something that at the time I just didn't quite feel quite on the same maybe conversational level earlier on. But perhaps that was growing up a bit too quick. That's probably what it was, I think, rather than anything else. Maybe just not embracing that. But the life skills that you gained from going away to university, I think that's the bit I would definitely recommend and do again. A bit like you, I think the studies, I was doing okay at them. I was passing my exams, I was passing my coursework, but was not turning up at all. It was just as you handed a bit of paper in the day before that I'd done probably the night before on the laptop. Probably after I came in from the bar, started doing the research and just handed it in by the morning. But I was enjoying, I think.
It's a good job ChatGPT wasn't around at the time. That would have been made things even easier for you.
I don't think I was cutting corners as such. I wasn't trying to cheat it. I just was someone that felt I always needed that sense of urgency a little bit, and perhaps didn't feel as if I was very applied. It didn't feel very challenging as well for me. I don't hope it doesn't come across as arrogant, but it was something at the time that earlier on in the studies, I a bit like Chris was saying, I just didn't really see what the value was. It was kind of, a lot of it was stuff I already knew, like the financial side of things in the first year university was just basic profit and loss accounts that I was already dealing with when I was working in management behind the bar, and bits in there, or buying and selling, and then some of the bits that weren't practical or applied, they're very theoretical. That I kept saying, well, you put this into a job scenario, you can't apply this theory to go on 100 people because it won't work. You've got to take people on different bases or different groups, where they were saying, this is one theory of one particular guy, here we go. If you do this, everyone will work 20% more productivity, and this will improve the business. And I was going, rubbish, don't agree with that. So I kind of...
But do you not think if you went If you went back now, though, you'd maybe have a different attitude towards the studies. Like you'd be thinking, right, well, that's rubbish, but here's my thesis. So I think when we're young, we tend to have that attitude of being spoon fed, like, here's the education. Whereas when you're older, maybe you'd see it as, oh, I'm going to go to university and I'm going to advance things, my own thinking, change people's points of view, that type of thing. Do you know what I mean? I think I relate to what you're saying, which is my attitude was just, well, I can get by here, do the bare minimum, tick the box and get through. Whereas if I went back to studying now, I'd be there for my own, for learning for the sakes of learning, trying to enjoy it and advance my thinking on subjects.
Yeah, perhaps you're correct. Perhaps you are correct on that sort of thing. I think sometimes I've generally always worked on the whole time, and I progressed in the end, sort of in a career since then. But it was just, I just couldn't see the setup. And I think for me, then exactly, I think I tried to say for one of the essays that I didn't believe in this particular theory. But the actual question was to write about why you believed in it. So it was going, well, I don't. It was going, well, you have to. So I was going, well, I can write what you want me to write. I can write what you want me to say, but I won't believe in what I'm writing. But I can write in terms of the points you need to get the marks. So again, it always felt that I was just ticking boxes. Life felt like that for me. I felt like I was ticking boxes that I didn't really believe in. I didn't believe in the structures I was going along. Where my mindset was kind of more, again, that transition of time or transition of barter culture or experiences or treating people at face value. I just saw a lot more practical in those bits. But again, this was all on the wayside to me being completely broken mentally and also now becoming an alcoholic. So who was I to judge at the time? I was kind of all over the place. But yeah, I think the life skills you got from there, though, certainly I think were very integral. Meeting new people, moving away from home for the first time. And again, also the principles I think you learn at university of perhaps deadline working and peeling there and working to an academic study and various bits there that perhaps I didn't appreciate at the time so much.
Yeah. No, I think what you said, that rings true with me a lot. Like I was thinking just yesterday, like I think when you're a kid, like you've mentioned a conveyor belt before of life and you just sort of follow the thing. And when you're at school, you just go and get through your lesson. It's like, oh, another music lesson. But if I squander 20 minutes messing about and then it's only another 20 minutes till the lesson ends or whatever. And then you grow up and I was thinking this yesterday, you look back and like the opportunity now to be able to learn a different language or to learn musical instruments and all this kind of stuff. And even history, I hated history at school, but I now listen to like history podcasts and stuff. And imagine you've got all that freedom that's given to you, all that time that's dedicated to be able to learn. And maybe it's just the way it's done, or maybe it's too intense, or maybe you're too young to appreciate it. I don't know, but God, I'd sort of give everything to like have that time and freedom to just be, to be able to go away and learn the things that I want to learn now. How cool would that be?
It would be cool. I think it is just the time of the life, though. I mean, it's like, you're a kid, you're told to do everything, you just follow along. And then I think a lot of us struggle to transition to having a purpose in our life and having a self sort of purpose, if I can call it that. And certainly hearing your story, Harrison, that maybe resonates because it sounded as though you were kind of just there ticking the boxes, going along. It's not actually until later in life that you've found a real purpose. And I think that sense of purpose completely transforms how we feel about ourselves, that we're not just here to do what society tells us to do what our parents have told us to do what whoever told us to do. We've actually jumped off the conveyor belt. We've made some self-determining decisions about our life.
Yeah, and that's hard to do when you're young, isn't it? Because who the hell knows? Like we've said, you don't know what you want to do. And you don't see the purpose of it, as Harrison says. Like, you don't see how you're going to apply any of it. So it's not a transaction where you're getting paid for your time or anything at the time. It's a future investment, isn't it?
It's almost like you've two options, sort of rebel and don't do maybe what society and your parents tell you to do, or just go along with it and end up doing what your parents and society tell you to do. But they don't feel like great options until you get some self-awareness, and then you can make your own decisions. I don't know. I've made that up on the spot.
I think there's lots of bits, isn't there? I think, as you say, Chris, I think sometimes when you're actually doing something that maybe you enjoy and want to go down. If you know the path that you want to be on, then perhaps then you find your way a bit more. But I think for me, I think I was still coming to terms a lot with my place in the world. So then I didn't really understand where to position myself at that time as well. But it's, I don't know. One of those that, again, when I first revealed this on a podcast, I think maybe quite early on, I didn't finish my studies. And at the time, my employers didn't realise that. So it was an interesting one. But it felt as if once I got through the door, I did 3 years in the end of studies, but over 2 stints. So it looks as if I'd finished the degree. But once you got through that first job, it felt as if that was kind of, well, the skills from there were clear to see. And that was really the basis of the degree, I think, was the fact that it just showed that you had certain skill sets that you could take into the workplace.
And Harrison, you did sort of self-declared you were an alcoholic. At what point did you realise this, and at what point, obviously, clearly, we know you're not now. So this podcast called Life Changes, just talk us through what was the moment that it struck you and life started to change for the better.
Yeah, at the time, no. Again, like before, I didn't see it unusual for being in the pub with the old boys. I didn't see it unusual for the path I was going on. There was a lot of crisis control, I think, for me as well. I think I was kind of, I didn't want to be here at all. I didn't want to exist in life. I didn't see what my purpose was going to be. It wasn't a case of just giving up, but I felt as if I was able to do certain things, but felt as if I couldn't apply myself to them or be conscious to things long enough, and would really struggle with sort of day-to-day path and perhaps just turn up for other people. So I felt as if I was constantly being selfless, really. I wasn't wanting to do anything for me. I was bottom of the heap. And really, if I could keep everybody else, that humour side that you mentioned before, Chris, if I could improve somebody else's day a bit or make them laugh, then it didn't really matter what I was going through. That was kind of bottom of the ladder and day to day. But also didn't want to go and, I suppose, completely end my life, because I felt as if that would then really push on a lot of pain to other people in my life. So it didn't feel as if that was a solution to me either. So it was kind of, I was in middle ground of not wanting to be here, but not wanting to not be here in a way. It was a very bottom of the rung sort of bit, in that maybe bottom 5%. So for me, it felt as if drinking myself literally to this blackout each day was going to make the days pass quicker. It was going to speed life along. It was going to keep me here almost like I was on ice. I was in the cryogenic freezer, if you will, freezing myself just to be here for whatever this life particularly was. So it was, and I was conscious to this. I was conscious to what I was doing, but I wasn't conscious to the fact that the levels of consumption I was having doing this were obviously problematic and were a problem in itself. So at the time, it was very much a medicinal tool I used for myself. I did seek some medical help earlier on, didn't really go down those paths. Again, perhaps not thinking maybe they were trying to apply me to a structure. I didn't feel as if that was fitting me. So again, I'm very stubborn, probably there's still elements of that these days. But I think I was stubborn to where the life was taking me, and just felt as if, no, I'm okay. I'm just going to drink myself to this path. And that was my way of having the least damage to those around me by keeping myself here. So it was a dark cycle, really. But it was something I was highly functioning, because I was still working all the time at this point. I was still working my way up the trade. I wasn't an aggressive drunk. I wasn't someone that was making a scene of myself. I was known as someone that was quite sleepy drunk, really. I think I'd go into town, into these bars, and sometimes I'd go in, I'd be really fearful about how I'd been the night before if I couldn't remember. And I'd always be like, was I okay? Or didn't do anything out of character today? And they were going, no, you're absolutely fine. You were still saying please and thank you all night at the end of the bar, but you were literally, your eyes were closed for the last 2 hours, and you were basically not holding conversation, which they perhaps shouldn't have been serving me at that point, but that's another question. So it was kind of something that was very much a solitary action, nomadic, pub to pub, just getting to this point of what I call my quota, the point in which I went from being that euphoric period to shutting off and almost pressing pause on life and in my head. And that was the sensation I wanted. That, of course, came with a lot of other issues, financially, health-wise. I was someone that was life at home was probably looking all over the shop, but would turn up to work still. That was kind of a bit of a secret. And would just go on this path of bouncing group to group. So no one really understood the full extent of my consumption, because I was known as a good drinker, heavy drinker, was always in the pub, but I wouldn't see the same people through that whole day cycle. So they only saw a section of each day of my life. So it was something that didn't come into my head at all up until I got in a relationship. something that I really wanted at the time. Again, I was probably in a relationship with alcohol at the same time. Really, I was in two relationships, and perhaps I really wasn't someone that loved myself, so perhaps I wasn't ready for that. But it was something that I wanted to share life with somebody else. That was kind of the only thing I really wanted from life at the time was the love of somebody else and that love back. But I wasn't the character at the time to be able to be the right partner. I don't think. And sorry, I was 25 at this point, Chris. Sorry, she was a very selfless individual, but I was completely selfish. Really, I was kind of always putting the drink first. I'd always have a drink before I went round. She'd spot little signs. It would cause arguments here and there, and it would always push me further onto the drink each time. And one of these particular occasions, I'd gone out and acted unfaithfully to this partner, and it was the end of that relationship, and rightly so, really. And it was the first time for me that I'd never wanted to be this burden on anybody else. I'd used this path to solely keep myself here to try and have minimal impact on anybody else, despite the fact that, as a lot of us know, alcohol and perhaps subsequent alcoholism has a huge dissolving effect on those around us. You maybe don't see it at the time. But, unnoticed for me, friends and my mum and stuff were seeing what was going on to some extent. Ultimatums were starting to come in. And, of course, this partner that, I loved had now caused this horrendous pain on her. So it was something that at the time, the tool I was using was now far from being medicinal, was very much a poison for me, and was something that really, at the end of that relationship, really snapped me out of this life. It was very much an overnight thing. It was the 6th of June, 2016, and it was the day that I vowed to leave alcohol behind. I'd come to terms with the fact I was an alcoholic. I was using this substance daily at this point. I probably hadn't had a sober day for the best part of 5 years, and literally, was an absolute slave to it. It was like a possession in a way. But likewise, I felt I had to be accountable for my actions because I had done that ultimately. I had caused that hurt to somebody. I couldn't blame alcohol for that. It was me. Yes, I was under a substance, but I had done that. So the fact it had compromised me as who I felt I was, who I believed I was as a person. I felt I was an honest person. I was loyal. I'd go out my way for other people, and again try and make people feel good with that humour side again, perhaps, Chris. And I was doing exactly the opposite through my own actions. So it became literally from that day, I vowed to leave alcohol behind, and it kickstarted this new path.
Can I jump in with a couple of questions there then? So one of them is just a practical question. So I'm guessing you maybe had a driving license and a car at this point. Were you didn't?
No. I'm shaking my head for those that aren't watching the video. No, I didn't drive at all. No, I had a provisional at 17. Again, that was something else I didn't really see. I didn't really see the aim of driving. Again, it was something else like, why do I need to drive? There was a regular bus to Carlisle, where I was from. And in York, I didn't need a car. It was very much a walking city. And of course, at that time in my life, it's thankful because I'd always been over the limit. I would never been able to drive. So I didn't drive at the time. I hadn't passed my test at that moment.
Yeah, the other one was you mentioned sort of you'd maybe reached out to medical help and didn't find it particularly useful at the time. What was that? Was that a GP or what happened there?
It was my family GP, yeah. So that was, I think perhaps he could see this path a lot earlier than I ever saw it. He was the same GP that I spoke to afterwards. I missed out a bit of this story as well earlier on at 21 when I'd sort of slightly revealed a little bit of this secret to some people, where I basically attempted to end my life at one point, and I came clean to my mum. I said that basically wanted to say goodbye to her, drunk in the early hours. And I did come back home to Cumbria and seek help with the GP at that point, and he really could see what was going on. But at this point, because the alcohol consumption was so high, a lot of it was being blamed on my alcohol consumption, and I was trying to say that no, this has been there a lot longer before I ever started drinking. And he had reports from me at 14 of going to sort of thing, but I rejected perhaps what he offered me. I think he was trying to put me on the meds at the time, and I didn't want to be on them. I felt that it changed me as a person, so I tried to just battle through what I was doing. So I'd had medical intervention there. Perhaps at 14, I'd gone in, not really, perhaps certain bits not being right. And again at 21, when perhaps I had my first rock bottom moment that perhaps maybe could have been the catalyst for change, but ultimately just caused me to carry on in the same path. I was annoyed that I'd revealed any of these secrets. But now at 25, having this second rock bottom moment in a way, that was really the point that through my own actions, I felt as if I had to leave that behind. So this was something that overnight, I remember going to work that day, the next day, the 7th of June, doing the breakfast shift, and my boss coming over to me and saying, "You don't seem quite right today, Harrison." And I just completely broke down in front of him. I was just a broken man. And he said, "Take him in outside and go and see yourself outside for a bit." I didn't come back in. I just sat outside staring at the wall, literally just feeling like my whole life had just crumbled beneath me. Everything I'd built, everything who I was, like who was I really? I was known as a good drinker. I worked in the pub. That was my partner at the time. I lived in York, and all of it was kind of a facade. It was all kind of, it wasn't the path I wanted to really be on that I'd kind of created. And my friend came out to take the shift on at 3:00. My colleague to take the shift over, and came straight out of a pint glass. And he hates me saying this now. I think he thinks he's an enabler. But he came straight out and said, "Here, get this down here." And I said, "I don't drink anymore, John." He said, "You what?" I said, "I don't drink anymore." So I can't drink. It completely compromised all aspects of my life. And I remember him looking at me just really bizarre. You'd seen this guy at the end of the bar, literally every night of the week, drinking whatever was going, and moving on into the bars at night, trying to drag him out probably as well, probably just a pusher with the alcohol, trying to find someone else to join me. And that was it overnight. And the levels I was consuming at the time, medically, probably not advisable, or medically not advisable at the time. But just felt as if I was completely being snapped out of this spell that I was under at the time. And a couple of days later, I left York. So I'd been there for 7 years. I'd made a lot of friends. I was 5 years into this job, of course, university. It's there, my ex-partner. But I just left it all overnight. So I left my flat. I didn't say goodbye to anybody. I just came back to Cumbria. And for the first time, put on my personal Facebook page at the time what I've been going through and what I've been keeping secret now for the last 12 years. So I felt as if I was just so accountable to I felt as if my whole life had just fell apart, and that literally I had two ways I could go. One was shuffling off this mortal coil, or the other one was putting my hands up and literally going, "Look, this is the lie I've been living, really." And yeah, the fact that I needed help and trying to make this right and try and really repair my wrongs as well. It was trying and redeem my own actions was the catalyst.
Did that feel like a relief when I guess you spend a bit of time writing this confession, or whatever the word is, admission, or when you press send and I guess comments start to come back and reactions start to come back? Did that feel like a weight off the shoulders, or how? I bet it was quite scary as well.
I think I was just so broken at this point, Chris, in honesty. I didn't feel as if this was just a moment that glued me back together instantly. I think I just felt as if I'd done something wrong, and that because I felt I was an honest person, that I hadn't acted that way at all, but the way I had to basically put my hands up and go, "I've done wrong here," and take the blame and basically face whatever wrath I felt I was due to face. Which obviously didn't come that way. I mean, if anything, the support I got back from people and the comments that came after that and the people that reached out was the opposite. For so long, I just thought I was going to be this burden. I thought I was going to be judged by people. I felt as if I was going to be cast out or not seen as a friend anymore. And it was the opposite. These people were literally there to lift me up from the moment I fell down to the bottom. And it was something that I'll never forget, because I was very lucky to have a lot of these people in my life at this point still. I was someone that I wasn't acting the friend back. I wasn't really perhaps the most glowing family member. So if I was turned up as unreliable. Any events you went to, I was probably caning it or turning up half pissed, or not turning up at all, which was more likely the occasion. And there they were, people that perhaps had a few times perhaps nearly even left my life and gone, "Look, do you want to be seen with you the way like this anymore?" To then being the people that were there literally to lift me out of this path when it all came crashing down. So there's so much faith and support that I could never repay from that moment. I'll never forget it. But in terms of feeling like the relief at the time, I don't think I got that feeling. I think I was just so clouded and so broken at this point that it just felt like an admission of guilt really at the time.
You've quit your job, moved home. What are you doing day to day, or what happens then?
So initially, obviously, I'm trying to leave behind alcohol from my life. This has been the one thing that my whole life has revolved around. Every waking hour that I'm awake, really. I did one job in the morning. The minute I had a first pint, that was the day done. That's what I was doing to the bar shut in the evening, or I got forced out of the bar. And I tried to throw myself into fitness as a means of replacing this hole, because I felt as if I wanted to leave alcohol behind. I couldn't stay in that city any longer that I was in. It was too familiar for me. The routine was there. I couldn't be in that environment anymore. The pub trade, There was no way I could get sober working in that job. I felt I had to get out of it and leave it behind if I was going to make this change. But of course, I was still wanting to get back to York. I was still trying to make amends with this partner. I was still trying to win her back. Which, as time went on, of course, this became for me. But the hole I tried to fill it with was fitness at the time. So initially it was I joined the gym again. I took my old auntie's bike out at one point. I think I was cycling down the Yorkshire Wolds on this little lady's bike because it was the only one I had. Too small for me. Heading out there. And again, I'm 22 stone at this point as well. I'm grossly overweight. I've just come off the drink. I'm pining for my ex. I'd stopped smoking at the time as well. I threw my last pack of fags in the bin. So I'm going through all this horrendous sort of headaches, sweats, hallucinations at one point, again, through the withdrawal side of things that, again, medically, perhaps, again, not advisable at those levels. And just trying to replace this hole. And one by one, friends began almost turning up at my doorstep as well. Because I went back to my home where I'm at now, my mum's house, and they knew where I lived here as a child. And they turned up and sort of go, right, come on, let's go on a bike ride today. Or let's go out for a bit of a walk here. Let's go for a coffee or go to the gym. And I was doing this obviously in my own time as well, but they were obviously coming alongside. Activities didn't involve the drink. And one particular friend turned at my doorstep and said, let's go for a hike. And at the time, again, I didn't know what to expect at all. The Lake District was literally an hour away from where I'm from. We had the Pennines even closer, 20 minutes away. Never gone up there in my life, never embraced it. Didn't have any equipment, perhaps other than some boots I maybe bought in a residential when I was like 14 that was far too small now. So this report about I had, which was some old scabby trainers, I think a pair of swimming shorts and a jumper I'd often wear down the pub on a Friday. And he just took one look at me on the doorstep and said, you can't go like that. Look at the state of you. And I was, I don't know. Well, what do I have? I have my school bag on. I think my old school bag as well to go up the hill. and I jumped in the car anyway. And obviously, I'm pretty. Well, I'm not really talking a lot of this, but I'm kind of just gazing out the window. Sort of. It's the first couple of weeks from this whole turnaround, so I'm kind of appreciative of the support, but probably not really showcasing my appreciation too much. I'm kind of still picking up the pieces in my own head, a lot of it really. And he pulls over this outdoor store on the way there to the Lake District, goes in, asks what my boot size is, grabs this pair of boots off the shelf and buys these boots for me. And again, it was another huge show of faith and support. I mean, I had no money at the time. I was completely penniless. I spent the last of my money and wages on the last of my rent and stuff that I just obviously left in the lurch because I'd left the job so quickly as well. I had a few things that I lost financially that way. And didn't have anything. I mean, I'd racked up all this debt and all these bars in York as well, and just tabs I'd left open and blown through a load of inheritance that I was lucky to get from a great uncle all down my neck. So this purchase of this boots, I mean, I think they were a £20 pair of boots at the time. It was just a huge show of faith and support as well at the time for me. And about half an hour later, he pulls up at the base of Blencathra in the Lake District. So I'm staying up at this mountaintop. And those 20 minutes earlier, thinking, wow, what a great friend this is. I'm now thinking, what have I got myself in for here? Staying up at this hillside. So this is in the first 2 weeks. So I've done no exercise for like 5-6 years. I'm still coughing up my lungs from the fags. I'm going through all these battles in my head. And next time I'm getting frog marched up this mountainside. So God knows how long it took me. There was no checking that on Strava afterwards, that's for sure. It was just plodding on this hillside and getting sort of forced up verbally, probably and physically, up this hillside. And slowly but surely reaching that summit circle of Blencathra, and quite a baptism of fire for me. And he turns to me and goes, right, we're doing Helvellyn next week. So that was it. A week later, it was the same story again. Now at the base of Helvellyn, 950 metres, one of the third highest mountain in the Lake District. And again, going up this stone staircase from the Filmere side, actually getting frog marched up again, one foot in front of the other, staring at my feet, absolutely blowing out my arse, getting up this hillside. And it was just something that was so far away from the life I was living just 3 weeks previously. Yet so determined to also make this change in my life and try to prove that I was better than my actions with this substance.
When you got to the top of that first hill, did you feel, were you still sort of pissed off, like, what am I doing here? Or were you like, this is amazing?
I think that was a moment of relief, Chris. Finally getting there and going, oh, it's over. The burning quads and all sorts have stopped. There's a reprieve. I certainly don't think I had that much of an appetite for another one at that time. I was very much just glad it was over. And there was just so much cloudiness at that time. It's difficult to look back, and there wasn't particular bits of going, oh yeah, I'm spurred on for another hill, or that's it, I'm making progress. It was all just it was punishment in a way. I was kind of punishing myself through these aspects of trying to beast myself through it and trying to prove that I wasn't this person. And I felt that the best apology was change behaviour. And if I could then show, not only through words, but if I could lose some weight, if I could go through there, leave the alcohol behind, get sober, and rebuild this path, that I was showcasing that what I meant was true, because my words weren't getting believed, of course, at this point, what I was saying. And rightly so, because again, I'd actually, out of character and not very nice to people. So it was understandable. But at the time then, there was no sort of glowy, lovely, I've really enjoyed this, or some sort of ethereal state. It was just very much, get me down here, and I probably need a good shower.
Yeah. It's funny, because it sounds like I kind of assumed you had this almost D-Day and you wanted to change for yourself, but it sounds like, I'm sure that's the way it ended up, but you were doing this for almost external reasons at the beginning. Does that sound right?
I think that's fair to say, Chris. Yeah, and I think that's something I have spoke about since. It very much wasn't for me at the time. I think, again, I was still bottom of the heap. I was still bottom of the ladder. I didn't really care about me. Ultimately, I was now trying to right my wrongs. I knew I'd inflicted a lot of hurt on people, and being that burden again, that was never my aim. And now the fact I'd done exactly the opposite of what I was ever setting out to be. So I felt as if I was trying to repair these moments. And in certain moments as time went on, that there were certain bits that I felt sometimes that it wasn't always my place to get that as well. You weren't always going to get that apology granted sort of thing. Like I went to AA for a bit during this point as well. I went to some group therapy, and that was one of the 12 steps in there, was sort of, seek apology from others and sort of thing. But there was a point that people didn't want to talk to you. Then what do? Do you keep knocking on the door for apology until they probably get a restraining order? I mean, no. So you have to sort of at some point come to terms with that yourself. And there was times where as the path went on, I was trying to make this positive change. And sometimes you had to maybe, again, appreciate that yourself, that perhaps you couldn't always maybe right the wrongs you'd had, and some of those would always stay as they are and perhaps were unhealable. But early on, I was bottom of the heap for sure. It was very much just trying to prove that these weren't empty words.
Yeah. And what was your friend's name that dragged you up the hill or marched you up the hill?
So my friend was Ryan, a chap that's still a big part of my life these days. He very much was someone that had got me into the gym early doors. He was actually right back at the start. He used to work in the pub that I first started working behind the bar, actually. So he's doing full circle in this sort of journey. He visited New York at times as well. Subsequently became a housemate of mine in Ambleside. Not now, but again, still a chap that I head out quite regularly with in the hills. But he was the one that introduced me to it, and really, again, with other friends as well. But he was perhaps that most integral one for that, the hiking love that started.
So go on, it's Helvellyn the week after.
Yeah, so Helvellyn. So again, just a nice gentle, just just edging me into this hiking world. Just two of the biggest hills in the area, and and there I am again. I think just marched up this hillside and really feeling like it was just I can remember just staring at my feet, gasping for breath really, and just sort of legs burning. Is it over yet? Is it over yet? And just really feeling like I was just having to have that faith that it was going to come right, and it was going to be worth it, that path. And really, I suppose the uphill struggle was kind of quite like a physical metaphor of what I was going through myself. Really, it felt as if it was quite a physical manifestation of the path I was actually on. And after a few hours, again, probably got to the close of this summit top, and remember being at the top of that hilltop, and just having that sense of achievement coming over me. In fact, I'd got to the top of this hill, and Helvellyn was one of the few that I'd sort of known of. I knew it was quite a big hill, though, despite thinking it was like a craft beer early on, I think, rather than a mountainside. And being at that top, getting that sort of dopamine, that sense of achievement, again, looking over that vista down below, it was just like something else was being sparked in me. Like I really enjoyed the feeling I was getting, that feeling I'd often wanted from alcohol that gave me that relief. But I was getting that now with none of the downside, other than, a few DOMs in the legs, various bits, but it was none of that everlasting negatives that alcohol was giving me. So it was something I wanted more of from that moment, and again felt that this path, that push, that struggle, that challenge was also giving me a lot more in life as well. So it started on from there. So a week later, it was Scarfell Pike again, same story. Ryan and I again up Scarfell Pike. I think within a month we were down to Snowdon, doing Snowdon via the Cribgot Ridge, and then 2 months later up Ben Nevis via the CMD. And again, I'd gone from literally, this is all in a 3-month period from that June moment. turning it all around. And by which point we started going on a few more runs. One friend turned up and said, "Come on, we'll go for a run around the local tarn." I said, "This is a step too far now." I said, "I've got into hiking, but I'm not going to come into a run all of a sudden. This is a bit ridiculous now." But he forced me out, and we did 1 or 2K around this tarn. Again, despite being a bit hill fit now, I was very much struggling around this tarn. And but I kept it going. So 2K became sort of 3, became 5, which went up to 10, 15. And then Ryan, again, in his wisdom, around Christmas time, convinced me to sign up for a marathon in the following year. And there we were in May 2017. So 11 months on from that turnaround moment, now crossing the line of a marathon. And it was just a huge redemption sort of moment and a huge show of what is possible change-wise in a year, personally, going on that sort of path. And it just felt like an absolute bucket list moment for myself as well, crossing that line. And so the fact that I couldn't really believe the journey I'd been on personally. And for me at this point, I was living it, I suppose, all the time. And I don't think I really appreciated at the time so much what I was doing. But from the outside, those that had maybe known me, both sides of the coin, if you will, it must have been so bizarre to see this chap going from probably posting the odd picture on Facebook of a pint glass on the bar to now all of a sudden, which hills are you running up today? It was an absolutely a right turn moment, just a light switch to a different life. It really was.
It's a really quick turnaround as well, isn't it? I mean, 11 months, that's very impressive and inspiring. What do you think gave you that ability, or what do you think it was that allowed you to turn it around so quickly? Certainly, and it'd be interesting to hear how you felt inside, but certainly outwardly, as you say, what you're posting on social media has completely changed.
Thank you, Nat. It was, by that point, I lost about 7 stone by that point as well. I think I was coming up a year sober. I hadn't touched any cigarettes again either. I was focusing on what I was eating a lot more as well. I'd gone back to my love of cooking, which I'm sure we'll get into in a moment. Cooking a lot more from scratch again, rather than falling in the takeaway on the way home. And I think it was just, once the ball started rolling, again, perhaps a bit of addictive tendencies there as well. I think I enjoyed the feeling I was getting from this exercise and the sense of achievement and pushing it on. And I could see more personal bests coming as well. So that was a good feeling of improving and getting faster or getting stronger or going further. So it pushed you on more and more. And I suppose that was kind of, again, I'm quite well documented for my addictive tendencies, I think. So I think that certainly played into that path as well, a little bit. And behind the scenes, I guess I was still trying to make this change. Obviously, I wasn't getting through to York at the time. I still wasn't trying to get through the change I was going through. But yeah, I was just so determined to try and leave it behind and try and prove that I was a better person than the man I'd maybe perceived myself as.
How you mentioned the physical sort of, I guess, withdrawal and sweating and stuff at the beginning. I guess that's what my question really is. Obviously, you're trying to change your lifestyle, but there's physical or there's addictions there as well as the mental side, the physical side. How was it just cold turkey? Was this the first time you tried to quit and you just went cold turkey and were stubborn enough to see that through?
It was exactly that, Chris. Yeah. It was just literally overnight. I'd gone from drinking those levels the previous day to literally the world comes crashing down, and that was it. I'm not drinking again. I didn't smoke again. Again, obviously, I'd not done any exercise, and again, for about the first 3 months, I think it was horrendous. It was really, really difficult. The headache, it literally felt like I had like a lead brain at the time, just sort of weighing me down each time and just walking around and just almost a lead brain that was too big for your skull as well. That just comes just pushing all the time, and sweats, hallucinations, all sorts. And I guess the temptation as well, but I didn't want it to be a taboo ever. I liked that pub environment. I liked the social side. I knew that life was going to still have that social aspects in many formats, if it was friends' weddings or bits going forward. So I didn't want to be someone that couldn't be in those situations because I didn't want to give that up. I think quite early on, there was a friend of mine, Craig, that had his stag do. And everyone was going, "You can't go on the stag do. It's not the right thing for you at this point." And 2 months in, I'm going on the stag do. I said, I'm giving up alcohol. I'm not giving up my life. So I'm going to be there on his moment. And I went on this stag do, and I was probably bored out of my mind by 11 o'clock, but it was when I was there. By the time they fell in the karaoke bar, that was me. I went home. I'm going to bed. I'm going for a run in the morning. But but at the time, it just felt something that I wasn't going to avoid because of the fact that I might struggle in that situation. I felt as if I had to push myself through those harder bits as well. But I appreciate it's not for everyone, and some people just can't be in those situations, and it's not the right thing. And there was a quote that really stuck out to me at that time as well about sitting in the barber's chair, and it said the more times you sit in the barber's chair, the more likely you are to get a haircut. And that was me. I think I was playing with fire a little bit. I was kind of going in the pub, and I was going in the pub by myself as well. I'm going there with Coke. I did a lot of journaling at the time, so that's something else I started doing. So I was sitting there and writing down in the pub my thoughts, having a Coke in the bar, in an environment that perhaps was quite familiar to me in a different format. So I was pushing slightly that sort of way, but I felt that was probably the reason that I got quite comfortable being in those settings and it never became a taboo. I was never crossing the street going past an off license. I was never not going down an aisle in the supermarket. So, and these days I'm quite comfortable going to a social setting or a wedding or even out and about and not drinking. So that was quite important to me as well.
Do you think people know your story, Harrison? So in a way, it kind of, from a social perspective, it maybe makes it a bit easier. People aren't saying, "Oh, Harrison, have this pint," or maybe the people you're actually socializing with don't know your story. And I'm just interested in that because I think personally, I've certain times in my life I've not wanted to drink, and I've felt a pressure to drink, just through either social situations or work situations. Everyone's having a pint, and then you ask for a Diet Coke, and you just feel that sort of judgment from people and little comments here and there and things like that. I wonder, from your perspective, whether actually just being open and saying I was an alcoholic or I am an alcoholic, actually pressure's off because they're not going to start, hopefully not going to start saying, here, have a vodka and Coke.
I think there was certainly a level of that, Nat, the accountability side of things. I think that because there were people that did, obviously know my story to some degree. There was friends that, of course, were trying to keep me away from that side of things. But I think there was also a bit, and I've said this to some of my close friends since, but there was an element of almost bubble wrapping you as well, in a way. There was people who were overly cautious for you, and you're going, I'm fine. And they're going to a bar and they're going, you're all right. You're okay in here. I'm literally fine. No problem at all. And like a drink would come and they'd almost be like diving in the way to like take a bullet for you to avoid this drink going in front of you on the table. You go, I'm not going to just inhale it by osmosis. Like it's fine. And even my mum at home, she'd often be sort of, do you mind if I have a glass of wine? I'd be like, well, do you mind if I have a chocolate bar? Like it's the same principle. I never became anti-alcohol. It was just something that didn't have a place in my life anymore. And I appreciate some people do go down the full side of really resenting it and it's in society. But for me, it was never that side of things. But I did obviously put it out there very early on, the struggles I had. So it was quite documented to those that knew me. But there was a lot of people in life you meet that you didn't know. And they'd often come up and you still had that pushing. And I was certainly a pusher when I was a drinker. I was certainly someone that wanted people to drink with you. Didn't want to drink alone, but would drink alone if they really wouldn't come down to my level. And I just, fine, I'll drink for three of us. Yeah, but it was something that I think that there was settings where I met people that perhaps didn't understand that, and they'd be like, "Why aren't you drinking?" And I just used to just come straight out of it and be like, "I'm an alcoholic."
Bet that shut them up quite quickly.
It did, yeah. And again, I was still coming to terms with myself. Really, was I this or did I struggle? And it's something that in the sobriety world, you get a lot of people speaking about this and how you sort of label yourself. And I've never really been that bothered by words. And again, maybe back to the long academical bit we were on about before. And I've kind of just never really, I don't really bother about the structures of things. I'm just kind of like, well, you call me what you want to call me. I know I've got a problem with this. If you've got a different word for that, that's fine. If you want to use a different word to describe yourself, no problem. Whether it's sober curious, in sobriety, alcoholic, regardless. I've got an issue. Allergic to booze. It just doesn't have a place in my life. I can't have one and leave it. And some people just can't grasp that. They couldn't grasp the fact that if you just have one, it'll be fine. And I go, well, it might be. But what I'm gaining in life from that point, it didn't feel as if it was worth that risk at this point. So as Chris mentioned before, I was learning to drive at this point as well. So that was something that started once I got sober. Learned to drive as well. Other bits, obviously, I was progressing in life that way. I was rebuilding relationships. So for me, there was a lot of positives without it. That a brief taste of this drink was like, well, what's that going to give me in return? So I just used to kind of shut it up straight away. But you had to have your guard up. You did have to be your guard up and avoid complacency, because there were parties where people having the drinks are flowing, especially if someone tried to buy you a drink or something. And again, I'll have a Coke. Did they actually get you a Coke? Where's it come from? I haven't seen it get served. was aspects in there that I was quite mindful to. So I'd often stay out the rounds a little bit and just do my own thing. But when I was bored, I'd leave, and bits in there. So I was quite guarded, I suppose, as well. Even in terms of desserts and food, there's sometimes the Christmas
No Christmas pudding for you.
Absolutely. Well, again, if it's booze soaked and the brandy's on it, I mean, there's burning it off, which is one thing. I don't mind like a red wine jus if it's all burned off and cooked off, but if it's a brandy soaked trifle, then that's a no-no.
Yeah. And I'm interested in the psychological side of this. You mentioned AA. I mentioned it to Chris last time we spoke. I did cognitive behavioral therapy, and there's a few bits when you're speaking today that do ring true to me, just in terms of filling a hole. I think that's probably how I felt. I was trying to fill a hole. I went to do some therapy, kind of figured out why I was trying to fill that hole, and it made a huge difference to my life. I then, particularly actually in relationships, I wasn't trying to seek particularly a partner to fill a hole. I was happy within myself, and then looking for someone to share my life with rather than looking for someone to fill a void that was there. So I'm interested, did you go through a kind of journey? Was AA part of that, or did you have friends to speak to? Can you talk a bit about that?
No, I'm glad to hear you found that support now as well, because it's kind of something that I think that is integral to these bits. I think people should always reach out for help if they are going through these issues and not be afraid of that. There are some fantastic resources out there for this. For myself, again, I quite quickly, in those first couple of weeks, again, I'd come clean to myself, perhaps that, and to friends and family and close people. That again, that path in itself, I think, going public is not always a recommended sort of thing, but certainly not public in the way I did. But I just felt that was my best way of trying to keep me on accountability and try to avoid perhaps people, as you say, pushing me into drink that perhaps didn't know what I was going through. It seemed to shut it up quicker. And again, it was quite an integral bit for pulling me out that path. But I also saw medical help quite early on. I went back to that family doctor, again, who had seen me at 13, 14. He pushed me on some paths then. Now, at this point, I had attempted to have some sort of therapy at university, actually, but the first time I pulled out of university, when I went back in on appeal and spoke about what I was going through slightly. So I had revealed it a little bit then to those at university, but not to anybody else in my life. It was kind of still under confidentiality sort of stuff. And they put me on a therapy side, but I didn't get on board with it at the time at all. It was just literally a bit like this. It was just a podcast for me. I think I was just chatting away, and it was like, right, your time's up, Harrison. You've gone well over time. Get out. And, so I'd go to the student union and carry on. But in this other path, I'd gone to the doctors, and he pushed me on a path into therapy because I was drinking so heavily at the time. Now, this is nothing against the NHS, because I'm a fierce supporter. My mum also worked a long time in the NHS. But this is just, again, like the academic bits at the start, sometimes the routine, the regiments we have in life don't always tell the full story to everybody. But I wasn't allowed access to mental health therapy early on because I was a drinker. Because of the level of drinking I was having, I had to have 3 months sobriety before I was able to access any mental health help. So because they blame basically alcohol as being the cause of maybe the depression and the suicide elements, they blame that because it's a depressant. So that's fine, and I understand that. But obviously, this had already been on my record long before I'd ever touched a drink. So the suicidal ideations was already on my record before then. So it was kind of something that was, I felt as if it wasn't quite playing the full story for me. But I went along with it. It was fine. And went to some one-on-one sessions with a drug rehabilitation therapist. So I had these sessions that were kind of just, again, me just voicing what I was going through, any struggles I was having. But at the time, I was also still straight away doing this fitness aspect. There was actually one time, I think, he called me up, this therapist, out the blue. And I was on the side of Crib Goch, I think, at the time. And I answered this call, and I was like, oh, this is my therapist. And then goes, are you okay for your session? Like, yeah, it's fine. Where are you at? It's pretty windy. Oh, I'm just on the side of this mountain. And it was kind of very bizarre how you kind of, I'm meant to be in these sort of days of, again, just going through those early 3 months of slowly rebuilding. And I'd just literally throw myself straight into this path, facing on. And then that came to an end, and I was pushed towards group therapy. And group therapy quite quickly became known to me as it's just AA. So it was kind of, they called it group therapy, but it was just AA under a different name. And when you got into the room, they all called it AA. So it was like you were just pushed onto a different bracket all of a sudden then. And I still wasn't in the mental health space at this time. So I went to the group therapy, and I enjoyed that aspect. I liked being in the room with like-minded people. I liked the fact that people in that room could understand what I was talking about in terms of how I went about getting my drink, why I went around. Perhaps I was waking up often on a piss-soaked mattress every morning and hiding that away and stuff. And I felt like my friends and my family couldn't understand that aspect as much as these people that had gone through it had. So I very much appreciated that side of things. But I didn't like the fact that it was quite religious at one point, which again is fine for some, but it wasn't really for myself. And it also felt as if there was a lot of blame culture in that room around alcohol, that alcohol was the reason to blame the whole time. And I would look around the room and I would see a lot of people who've got mental health trauma. They're either very anxious, they're in domestic relationships that are not going very well, they're either depressed, and they were using alcohol as that tool, and that's all it was. It was a tool. So I didn't feel alcohol was the actual root cause. The root cause was my own head. Alcohol was just the medium I used. Because I think ultimately we all just want to be happy. We all want to feel happy. We all want to feel good, and we use different vices to get to that sensation, that dopamine hit. It could be alcohol, it could be drugs, some people do adrenaline, it could be sex, food. I mean, that's one I struggle with a bit as well. Exercise. They all just get us to that point of having that happiness element. That's all we really want, everybody. So I felt as if that culture I didn't really quite get on board with. And I was on my own path at this point too. So there was the 12 steps. I think the first one was, coming clean, the fact that you're powerless to this substance, that I'd kind of done that before I'd even gone in the room with that Facebook post. Later down the line, I mentioned about that seeking apology from others. But along the way, I felt as I naturally almost progressed through my own 12 steps in a way. I was pushing that. I was trying to repay my things. I was trying to change actions. I was trying to be a better person in society. And then the 12th step these days is obviously repaying it back to the alcoholic still suffering. And I feel in a way that's how I try and formulate how I share my story these days. I feel that's become a purpose for me. I never knew what my purpose was. And although I wouldn't wish that path on somebody else, for me it's brought me out to this side now that I feel I can use that to try and help somebody else who's going through a similar struggle, hopefully. So that's become my 12th step in a way of just sort of sharing to the person still suffering, hopefully. And hopefully, again, I'm by no means a cure. I never put myself on a pedestal. I still go through struggles myself, but I've got 7 years sobriety under my belt now. I'm very much an open book in what I talk about. I wouldn't have shared this in the mirror at one point, where these days, I've shared it on some pretty major platforms. So it's a very, very different outlook on it. But the therapy side was one that perhaps I felt I needed at the time, but quite quickly progressed in. I think I found my own path as more of an ecotherapy route.
Congratulations on your 7 years as well. That's very well done. And it's easy to skip over that, I guess. Yeah, you touched on some really, I guess, deep and meaningful stuff there. I think that was the heart of it when you're saying like we all seek certain things and alcohol isn't necessarily to blame because it's just, as you say, a tool or an outlet for root cause problems below that or whatever, and it's addressing those as much as anything, isn't it?
I mean, there's certainly people who are more susceptible to it. I think that's definitely a thing. I think I was definitely looking for that kind of vice and fell down that slide. And it's certainly not a tool for some people that is going to be helpful in the long run. But I do think that's my interpretation of that sort of world. Is there's often a reason for it behind the scenes. There's often a reason we do a lot of these things. I mean, I went to the other path again of a lot of exercise, that sort of way, and I was probably doing too much in that extent too. I mean, sometimes I was going to the gym 3 times and then running back from the gym on the same day, and then really what in that fix and feelings if I was getting irritable if I hadn't gone out, and again just wanting that little hit, I suppose, of that happiness. Whereas again, alcohol was always that sense of I got to that point, that nice ethereal, happy little drunk stage. Then I fell off the other side of the cliff and then went into this blackout oblivion. It was just because it was too much of a teeter point. And food has certainly been one that, again, filling that hole, as Nat said, that's certainly been something. I know there's a literal metaphor to that as well, but I think I've often felt that sensation of almost being full in a way, kind of being full of something, or eating for comfort in a way, which I think is something that I'm probably struggling with a bit at the moment. I think since lockdown, that was something that was for the first time a period in my life that took me back to those days where I was back in my own 4 walls again and stuck in my own head and couldn't get out and utilize these tools I'd now built into my life as positive outlets. Were stripped away all of a sudden, and I couldn't get into this setting of home workouts and stuff. It was I've usually got to be in a different environment for different. I've got to get myself out into paths Although I was in a beautiful area again, like right back at the start with my personal battles, who am I to feel bad? I'm living in a beautiful area with all this green space. Yet it was just there almost teasing you. I was working, much more hours during that period than I ever done before. The hills were there, but Mountain Rescue was saying not to go into them in case something happened and you exposed someone else to COVID, which I completely understood and didn't want to be out there doing that. I suppose there was an element of having a maybe slightly increased local profile as well, that if I was out there flaunting it, then that wouldn't go down very well either. So I think quite quickly I sacrificed those elements and really, I'd be lying if I wasn't very tempted to drink on those days again, because that's exactly what I wanted to do, was just let those days go by quicker. And that's what alcohol did for me. It just put the fast forward button on life and skipped through it, just coasted. But I didn't do that. But being present through it all means that you have to be present through the bad times, but also present through the good times. But food certainly was the thing I fell back on for that. I think in comfort, eating too much, probably portion control, seeking comfort in that. And I think that's been something that I put a lot of weight back on during that point. So, and I'm struggling when I tell this story a bit, really. Recently, I do a lot of public speaking these days on stages of schools, universities, and I tell this story. And again, I had this 7 stone weight loss in this journey now. I'm talking about these runs I've done, and I'm stood there now, and I couldn't run up that hill at all today. I'm not on that same path, but mentally, I'm not where I was back then. And I know I'm self-aware of where I am, but I've certainly fell back a bit on my own journey, I think, in some way. But it's not square one. It's just more like square 3 or 4. And I think lockdown was one of those periods that there'll be a few of us that perhaps lost our routines in life, I think, and have to be a bit kinder on ourselves. So it's such an uncertain period and such a strange thing to go through that now it's easy to look back and go, well, yeah, it was all a bit aha, wasn't it? And just making banana bread and buying loads of toilet roll. But obviously horrendous for some of us. But it was, again, for many of us, it was a complete disruption of life and routine. It was a very, 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 very fractured time as well. So I think I do keep wondering how long I can keep blaming it, because I know it's about 3 years ago now. But it's something that I'm still trying to rebuild those routines in, because it took so long the first time. And now it's a different mental battle, trying to almost beat the ghost of yourself in a way, rather than anybody else. Nobody else, not comparing myself. It's just me, where I was. And now I'm not quite there myself now. So that's a different battle.
On the therapy side of things, and I think you mentioned journaling, which obviously sounds like you've gone through your own technique of dealing with things and sorting your own head out, which sounds very positive. Also, you mentioned there about the mixture of alcohol and mental difficulties, and that's something struck a chord with me, because similar problems in the family. And actually, when I looked into things, I was struggling at one point because I was trying to get help for a family member, and they wouldn't help them, basically because they said, oh, they're an alcoholic. Well, yeah, they're an alcoholic, but they've got these other, actually diagnosed serious mental conditions, which they weren't matching us to. And when I did a lot of research at the time, and I think in the States, there's lots of research and papers about how you need to deal with both at the same time. Whereas I think, and again, not knocking the NHS because they are fantastic, I'm sure this is done around the world, where they're lucky enough to get the help, is that it's kind of divided. It's kind of a binary thing. You either deal with the alcoholism or the mental health. And so, well, hang on a second, we've only got one brain. It's all kind of mixed together here. We have to deal with it together. But yeah, with this mental health stuff, I just feel like we're living in the dark ages still. We're just right at the beginning of our understanding of the brain and how it operates. This well-being stuff, I think they'll look back in 1,000 years' time and think, what the hell were they doing? They're giving people that drug. I don't know what it would be. Ritalin for that. That's mental. Can't believe they were doing that. And those doses, and it completely feels like it's sledgehammer to crack a nut. Now, that's just where we are as a race, quite frankly. I just think it's interesting to reflect that hopefully we won't be here in 1,000 years' time, as a rate. Well, we won't be here for sure, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think we will be.
But I just think it's thinking of it on those time frames helps us maybe reflect on just where we are and what's possible and what's not possible. I think we're really at the very start of how we deal with mental health at the moment. and there's lots of good things going around. But I think we're going to see a dramatic increase over the course of the rest of our lifetime in how to deal with these things and hopefully improve things for people.
I do class myself as an optimist on these sort of things, but sometimes I do see the aspects that we have, society-wise and technology and the way we're evolving in terms of how we use things in life, and perhaps even down to the health of the world and all various bits that all seem to be working in tandem. And you look back in terms of maybe into this epidemic or pandemic sort of we're going into with mental health now. It does feel as if there's a lot of external causes that in modern life are perhaps playing a part in that as well, that hopefully we come to terms with those more. But certainly, I think there's been a lot of change, a bit like technology in terms of when I was growing up, maybe yourselves growing up as well. The difference between then and now is huge. But then the difference what will come after that, a bit like when we invented the computer, there's a huge, big, giant thing, I suppose, in that big room with all those big servers and all the cooling stations. And now it's down to a little phone in our pockets, and that evolves every couple of weeks now in something new and fancy, where the gaps seem to get a lot shorter as time goes on. And I think even when I look back to when I was growing up, again, not having those role models at all, where now there's fantastic film stars and celebrities and sportsmen who are speaking out about their personal issues now, openly, transparently, which they'd have never even been brave enough before. They've got so much hate and stigma from either the press or feelings that they got from people, or maybe wouldn't have, hopefully, but they didn't feel comfortable to do it. So that's been a huge change, I think. And also in terms of how we speak about it in society, even now, the fact that we're speaking about this on a podcast like this wouldn't have happened as much then, or would have been shunned in a corner. So I think there has been fantastic movements already in those past. But as you say, perhaps sometimes we're still coming to terms with how we then manage those further. But I think speaking out again and just putting your hand up and saying, look, I need some help, is a huge, huge first step that shouldn't be forgotten either. So hopefully that's a much more comfortable thing for people to do these days, and that people do feel as if they can ask for help. Peers, friends, charities, or fantastic medical professionals.
Harrison, we should come on to some cooking at some point.
Cooking, yeah, that's been quite a consistent part, I suppose, of my life. Apart from maybe the brief blip of the darker years when I was more likely to be stumbling home with a doner kebab. But it's I've always loved my cooking, always loved my food, and it's something that, again, I very much associate with community and with togetherness. I think it almost back to really around the dinner table with my grandmother. I think so that sort of aspect of it was the place where the family would come together, and I really enjoyed that aspect. Again, perhaps that social creature in me that's always been there. I enjoy that was the catalyst, or the conduit rather, for conversation, food around the table. And again, that was something that the aspects of crafting that, the kitchen being almost the hub of that, the hub of the house, and people chatting away, sharing how they'd been, catching up. I associate that a lot with the culinary cuisine aspect. So quite quickly it began this almost self-scholarship of trying to read a lot of cooking books out there, watch a lot of cooking shows, and really test myself and experiment at home. Again, maybe that's back to the practicality of things. I always enjoyed maybe titration in chemistry more so than I enjoyed perhaps the physics essays that were kind of more that way. But enjoying the actual practicality of putting something together, the chemistry aspect of cooking, I really liked that aspect of seeing what the creation was and what could come from it. So when I was working in the trade, I've never trained as a cook. I've never trained as a chef, so that's why I don't call myself one. But I did pick up things along the way from people I've worked with from the trade, working for the kitchens for 14 years, hospitality. Met a lot of people along the way, and I've always been watching, listening, learning. And I think having that mentality of listening and learning, of asking a question just of someone that knows more than me, and listening back, was probably alien to what I was saying in the first half of this. Hopefully people haven't switched off and judged me by that first section. but I enjoyed that aspect of it. And although in my dark years I wasn't cooking as much, I still had an appreciation for good food, but I was still working in quite high-end establishments, even though I was, going through my own ailments. That, again, perhaps the reason I stayed in the trade so long, I think, was because of that lifestyle. I couldn't have been turned up like that in an office job, 9 to 5. They'd been fired on the spot if I was turned up stinking of booze and got red eye and all sorts every morning. Where in the pub trade, they could sort of maybe get away with it slightly more, where it was kind of gazed in that period.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I think hospitality has a lot of that, really. I think I loved it as a job, and I really would push a lot of people into that path. And I think you gain so many skills through life in there, really come out your shell in that world. But I think there are pressures in terms of life and routine sometimes that do come a cropper with a lot of smokers in there as well to get a break. That's why I took up smoking, was just to get out of a break from the situation. Again, the alcohol side, the peer pressure afterwards. Although I don't think I was someone that really came to peer pressure much. I had the breaking strain of a Kit Kat, so I didn't need much of a push into that life path. So quite quickly, if a fight was going, I was, I'll stay. Yeah, I had some plans, but we'll do those another day. But the cooking, was always there. So when I came back from the other side, it was something that quite quickly I tried to work out that how I was fueling myself was also quite important. So I tried to strip back the alcohol, I tried to strip back the cigarettes, I tried to throw myself into fitness. So I left that lethargy behind, but also felt that if I was fueling myself with crap, that wasn't going to help me either. So that wasn't going to give me, a good feeling mentally or physically. So I was trying to push myself into this physical activity. So how I was fueling myself was important. So not expecting a car to go 100 miles on a bad fuel source. So I began cooking a lot more from scratch again. So I began cooking proper produce from fresh, conscious about my not so much macros, but just making sure I wasn't too carb heavy on there, making sure I had the right protein and fresh greens each time. So that's the level I sort of go to nutrition wise. It's kind of just healthy veg, not too much carbs, substantial protein. And and kind of just trying to push into that path in there and use that as sort of a tool that was, again, quite mindful for me as well. I quite enjoyed the absent-mindedness of cooking and crafting in the kitchen, sat there, some music on, just thinking, relaxing through your day. I've always enjoyed that process. I appreciate it isn't for everybody. And when I got into the hiking side of things, I began basically taking sort of Tupperware pots of stuff I'd made the night before, or stuff I'd made specially to take with me on these walks after the first 3 walks or so, Scarfield Pike and stuff. I was then taking stuff with me. I didn't like going to, a service station on the way or getting a meal deal. I never liked that culture before, so I didn't want to do that when I was going into hiking. It always seemed like the first thing we sacrificed was food. It was straight back into pot noodle and a Mars bar off we go. So for me, it was stuff I made at home before. And I'd get these up at the top of the mountain, and people would pass comment about what I was eating when they got some soggy butties out of the bag that were all squashed by the spare jackets and all sorts in the bottom of the bag. And I'd be tucking into this nice little, panzetta salad or a nice sort of lentil stew I'd made or something. And someone said, why didn't you get a stove and start cooking out there from scratch? Literally.
Do you remember who said that? Because I was wondering where these two... Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it was just. I didn't catch the name at the time. I couldn't even pitch them, to be fair. But it was just a passerby on the hilltop, who passed a comment about what I was eating, and well, I'd be cooking it from scratch. And I thought, what? Yeah, it was just like a smart aleck comment, really. Just not said in jest. It wasn't said aggressively or anything. And I thought, I went home that night, and again, I didn't have any equipment again at the start, hiking wise. I didn't have any equipment cooking wise, so I thought, well, I need a stove. So I went online, I looked at a camping stove, and I bought this stove, which was quite an investment for me at the time. I didn't have a lot of money still. I was still repaying a lot of my debts and things. Bought this stove and just used what I had at home in the kitchen. So it was all proper pots and pans, proper chopping boards out there. I think I had a pestle and mortar with out one day. The satire was not lost on me at all. It was the ridiculousness of it. But just basically started going out to some local beauty spots that I'd gone up before, some hillsides, and trying to see if I could recreate some of these techniques now outside on a little camping stove. And I'd already started sharing online at this point under the name Fell Foodie, which again, looking back, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that was a bit of a guise for me at the start as well. That was another mask, I think. I wasn't willing to share publicly really who I was. So I came up with a bit of a fake name and a badge. Didn't share who I was, but just share the views I was seeing and the food I was cooking at home at the time. And that's how it started. So it was somewhere that I just didn't want to annoy people with pictures of my dinner on Facebook, really. So I started this anonymous page. Not to be one of those people, you see. And when I started cooking out there from scratch, again, it just seemed to take off a little bit. People seemed to have a bit of intrigue, I suppose, pictures of maybe food in those nice environments. So again, it's merging two loves. I mean, a lot of people love food, and a lot of people love the outdoors, but often the two don't cross over. They're very much separate. And I think seeing a plate of food in that environment was perhaps maybe sparked a bit of intrigue from other people. So it began to roll a little bit following-wise on there. And it went from there. So again, I just basically been more extravagant, more sort of more outrageous, what I was trying to recreate, what was possible, what I could do. And just really trying to showcase that it doesn't have to be boiling the bags up the hillside and things like that. It can be something a bit more extravagant if you like food like me. But I'm not trying to convince people to go and cook like this on big, long-distance journeys either. It was just more about little small adventures. If we were down at the beach for the day, getting some outdoor time, which I think is so integral to mental and physical health, activity in the outdoors, or it's a little walk up a hill, some woodland, or down to a lakeside, and perhaps spending a bit of time as well being still in nature and enjoying something good food to fuel yourself as well. So that could be something you've made at home already into a nice food flask and just sitting on a park bench somewhere. Or it could be something you take out as a bit of a quirky day out and actually have a little cook-up, like a picnic you would do more traditionally, out in an environment and actually cook it out there in that space. So for me, again, it was just so often we're rushing around in life. And I think it was just a nice way to be still and be present in nature, but in a different way, because I'm kind of one of those minds that needs to be doing something. So I think if I was there chopping or stirring, it was kind of enough for me to be actually still in that space and taking in nature in a different way.
I guess you're doing these by yourself rather than finding someone that's happy to sit around for half an hour or whatever while you cook, or are they there and happy to wait because they get to eat?
A bit of both, Chris. I mean, I have been inundated on offers to join me on these hikes since I've started doing this. I mean, it's been about 5 years I've been doing this for now. But less so to actually help me with any of the gear up the hillside, I find. It's often me carrying all that side. But at first, it was just me. It was me going out for me.
I'd definitely come and eat your biryani, Harrison. I saw that one and thought, oh, I'd take a bit of that. But I was going to ask, what's your favourite dish that you've done up a hill?
Well, we'll see what happens first, shall we now? We'll see if I end up in New Zealand first or you end up back here before we get that sorted. But favourite dish? This I get this question all the time. It's probably I always dance around it a little bit, really. I mean, the most complicated dish I think I've done, I did like a katsu curry from scratch on the hillside once. So panko bread coming, all the little chicken bits, shallow fry in there, making the rice, making the curry sort of carroted sauce, ribbing in the carrots and cucumber on there you go. So I have put it in the book. I don't expect this one to be done at all by anybody on the hillside, but perhaps it's one that someone will enjoy doing at home at some point from the book. But generally, I just love cooking for other people. I love, again, that conduit for conversation. I like the fact that it gets people talking. There's a bit of a primal aspect to it as well, cooking outdoors. Again, a lot of this stuff with the mental health side, it's stripping it back to who we are as more primitive beings, really. It's kind of just time in the outdoors, activity, fueling ourselves in the right way and not really, trying to poison ourselves with bits, or certainly in moderation, things in there. And it doesn't take rocket science to work out that tends to get us feeling a bit better. For the majority of us, some people, of course, have more serious issues that require more intervention. But for a lot of us, that is the maintenance for it. And it's always been that way since we were back hunter-gatherers. So I think for me, there's a primal homage to going outdoors, cooking around. I mean, I use a camp stove. I'm in national parks. I'm always leaving no trace out there. So I have an elevated stove rather than a campfire. But there's certainly a sort of proverbial campfire, if you will, in that environment. So I think that's the aspect I like, of sharing that time in the outdoors, under the stars, or out in the day for a hike with somebody else, cooking a meal that perhaps they enjoy, but it's in a different environment for them. So it's going to be a unique take on their favourite dish. They're going to enjoy it now outdoors with this great vista.
I have to say, I massively agree with, I guess, some of what you've said in terms of just food and it being fuel.
Just some of it, Chris.
Well, I don't want to suck up too much, but no, I guess for me, as a single bloke, it's so easy to stick a pizza in the oven. And it's so easy to do that too often. For over a year now, I've been doing those Gusto boxes, so a little plug for them, or HelloFresh, or whatever you fancy. But I mean, partly it takes away the ball ache of having to go to the supermarket, which I know is a first world problem, but it's not something I particularly enjoy doing. But it just turns up. I eat better is the end result. I know some people think it's a bit more expensive or whatever. I don't find it's too bad. But yeah, just the fact that I eat better, no matter what the reasons, the fact that it turns up. But yeah, I agree with that fuel side. And you've definitely inspired me to do a few meals. So the Tuscan bean stew is the one I'm looking at in your book right now. I did that at home probably about a month ago. But I got one of those solo stoves. So this is kind of a, I want to say wood-fired, as in you chuck twigs and stuff in it, don't you? And I got a little tripod and, took it. And like you say, it wasn't far. It was just like 10, 15 minutes away, pretty much in a field, not too far from the house. But yeah, one summer, so this is sort of 15 months ago probably, and cooked fajitas there over some twigs and sticks burning.
Amazing. The solar stoves, they're quite good little bits of kit, aren't they? There's a little sort of wood burner I used at the start as well, and I use a bit more gas now because generally it's I do a lot of demonstrations at festivals and events where the irony of doing an outdoor cooking demonstration when I'm indoors in a big aircraft hangar in the NEC, it's not lost on me. But gas tends to be more favourable for those sort of elements. But I think just again that time, isn't it? That time of just being out there, and there's a quirkiness to it as well. I think again, I'm not expecting people to go and knock the kitchens down and go and cook like this every single day because there's levels of this that we enjoy day to day. But I think there's a little novelty aspect out there. Again, families involved is fantastic too. But I appreciate what you said too about cooking for one can be quite difficult at times because again we do even in terms of how we buy them. And I think food in this country as a whole, I mean, coming away from the outdoor side, is something we almost lose connection with slightly. We're a convenience food culture over here now. We're very much, you see, when you go abroad, you see the difference in the fact that you haven't got chain restaurants and cafes like end to end everywhere. It's very much more about the produce and seasonal produce and where it's from and the quality of it people will go for. And yes, I know there's a price point over here where we do seem to be hit more on the price by the quality ingredients. That again, not everyone can go. And I think some of the celebrity chefs sometimes maybe miss that point when they're always going, make sure you buy that fantastic organic chicken. It's like, well, it's 19 quid, mate. Like it's difficult for one person to buy that. Yeah, they haven't got a lot of money, but obviously trying to do where you can do, or trying to support your butchers or greengrocers where you can do. But for one, the supermarket a lot of the time it's usually big bulk bags as well for stuff, or you've got to buy multiple bits that then you can't use in time, and you've got to be really almost clever with your batch cooking or your food waste to avoid it all going in the bin, which then is not a nice thing to do. Where the gusto side of things, as you say, if it is for one, yes, they look like they're more expensive from the outside, but it saves you buying all those individual bits that perhaps go to waste as well. So I do think there is value in that. I mean, sometimes I think the packaging side is just the unfortunate side of that, but I think that's the bit that's necessary, I guess, to do so. But there's quite a lot of packaging involved, isn't it, on those frontages as opposed to others. But if it gets you cooking something fresh that you may then have as a new recipe in your repertoire going forward, if you've done it once, it's just a step-by-step guide, ultimately. They're not doing it all for you. So then you maybe have something you can do in the future. And again, like these recipes outdoors, I always say, try something at home first. Don't go out there and cook on new equipment with a recipe you've never done before in a different environment. There's a lot of things that are going to go wrong, a lot of things that are going to be different. But something that you're quite au fait or quite familiar with at home first. Again, try doing that. Try replicating that in the outdoors. You'll maybe
Beans
know
on
what
toast.
Yeah, well, maybe so. Could be. It's essentially what that bean stew is, really, Chris. I mean, that could be just that with some nice griddled ciabatta just over the solo stove. Then there you go. You've got a bit on there. But there's all simple ways. And again, there's different stages to it too. So you can make it as hard or as simple as you like. And I appreciate some of those in there maybe go a bit the far end of the fart scale. But again, you can scale it back somewhere and just enjoy some nice food in the outdoors. And for me, that gives me a lot of joy.
And Harrison, tell us about the book then. Was that an idea you had, or was that someone passing you on a hill saying, you should write a book about that?
Well, there have been a couple of comments as time has gone on social media. Again, I mean, you mentioned the journaling before. I mean, I think I don't journal so much now, but I found that it naturally sort of evolved into me using social media as a bit of an online journal. So I've often been very open and honest on my social media channels about my journey. And that has felt like it's evolved into that for me now. Very much my journal is public in a way. And the recipes were the same way. And people started to suggest, it'd be great to get a book out there. And I was always, again, this journey was one I never really expected. Again, like a lot of life, I've never really known my goals. I've never known what my journey is going to be. But I just started doing this as a hobby. It started to maybe trigger a few people. I was just open and honest. It's led to some wonderful opportunities. And along the way, people have been maybe asking, well, maybe there's a book in here at some point. And I thought, well, maybe if someone ever backed me, I'm not sure. We'll see if it ever happens. And I met a lady called Lisa, who's actually my literary agent now. On a walk I did, I was out with a Country File magazine doing a little piece with them one day, and she was the partner of the chapter at the time, the journalist. And she went past and she said, "Have you got a book deal by any chance?" I said, "Oh no, I've not got one. Maybe one day, who knows?" So well, it's all here. I can see you out there in the cooking. You've got this. There's a little modest following online, and you've got like your logo and your branding and sort of stuff. And I can see it's all in place. I went, well, you just, I let things by chance. I'm kind of I trust life as it is these days. I'm not someone that tries to put too much pressure on it. Again, that was sobriety, just one day at a time. And I said, if it'll happen, it'll happen. And a few weeks later, she got in touch and said, I've decided I'm going to become a bit of an agent. She'd previously worked in the publishing world as an editor, come out of the world. But then she thought, I'm going to go back in the agent side. So she said, do you fancy being my first client? So I was like, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know a lot more than I do in this space. Again, perhaps, appreciating the fact that certain people have got a lot more skill set or knowledge than you have. So I was like, well, you're going to be better being in my corner than not being in my corner. And it went from there. So we started basically pushing it around a little bit, this idea of an outdoor cookbook designed around sort of camping stove vibes for maybe hiking, for adventures. We've got a bit of interest from some brands there and some publishers. And then ultimately Vertebrae Publishing, who have published the book called Cookout, got in touch and said, it's funny you should get in touch because we've just been talking about you in the office today and we were going to approach you. So it was quite a nice moment. It sort of came together like that, really. And then they really believed in what I was doing. They tend to do more sort of guidebooks or more biographies for a lot of fell runners, mountaineers, climbers. So it was a different foray for them into food, but obviously has that adventure overlap because it's kind of a bit of a unique niche in a way that was never an aimed thing. There's never a conscious effort to carve that niche. It's just sort of ended up being that way. And so we went to create the book. So I started putting together, I started aiming it around more adventure cooking. And I appreciate I cook more in the hills and up on the tops, but I don't expect most people to be doing that. More people are going to be all camping or perhaps paddleboarding on the lakeside or going in the caravan or van lifing. So it was just about food and adventure and all recipes designed around sort of single burners. So it'd be perfect for camper vans, for caravans, camp stoves. And I've knocked it down to different sections. So we've got breakfast, sandwiches, some one-pot meals, Summit Special, which is where the katsu leads in there. So ones that are a bit more extravagant that perhaps test some at home as well as the outdoors. Some desserts, and then also some snacks that you can make at home to take out into the outdoors. So if you can cook at home to take out with you on an adventure. So just trying to tie in food and adventure, whether it's perhaps somebody bouldering at the Peak District, whether it's a guy fishing somewhere in there or again a surfer, just tie in food and adventure in a different way. And it's all come together. So 85 recipes in there, as well as information around the equipment that you need to use. Each recipe's got the equipment listed on each one as well. Also bits about what certain bits of kit are and why perhaps you should use those, what stoves are best for certain conditions as well, and certain fuel types, as well as do's and don'ts around cooking outdoors, more countryside code aspects, and some hints and tips to try and make it easier for everyone to do so. So, again, a very random journey that was never really what I aimed for, that, again, perhaps going through a couple of major breakdowns in life has not been a bad thing for me, but it's it's very bizarre coming full fruition, and I've spoken a little bit about my journey in the book as well, but not too heavily in there. There was some publishers that did want to weave the two together all the way along, and I felt as it was a little bit maybe a bit brash to sort of be talking about perhaps a suicide attempt and then going, here's a lovely souffle. Like it didn't feel as if it was a natural tangent, so I felt as if it was one or the other, perhaps. So maybe that will get documented in a book in the future, who knows? But this one has certainly been a proud moment to do, very much a childhood dream, and one that I'm very thankful to have the opportunity for.
I have another question. Who's the most famous person you've ever cooked for, Harrison?
Is this a question you know the answer to, Chris, by any chance?
I have a suspicion that I do, but go on. I'll let you tell it.
Well, I don't think I've cooked for you yet, so it's not yourself just yet. But no, I had a wonderful opportunity to go onto the national television in the UK here on the BBC and cook for a lady called Dame Mary Berry. That was a very bizarre turn of events that sort of came about out the blue, really. I got a phone call one day from this random number, and again, rather than asking why have you got this number, listened to what they had to say, and they said, would you like to come out for the day with Mary, and she's going to come to the Lake District, and we're going to go out and you can cook for her for the day. So straight away, I think I said, I'm not going to make her a cake. There's no chance I'm baking her a cake. And in my spare time, I had a little go at making a cake on the shores of Windermere, using this little bit of equipment that's a bit like a convection oven called an Omnia camp stove oven, and creates like a bit of a bundt tin with a lid on the top, so it creates a convection style effect. So I've made like toading the holes on there, the lasagnas, nice focaccia breads, and baked a cake on this little thing on my camp stove, and it went quite well. So I posted it on social media. The producer then saw it and said, yeah, we'd like to take the recipes that you said you were going to do, delete those, and now we want you to make this cake for Mary on the day. So pressure was certainly ramped up.
No pressure at all.
Did you practice it?
Just that one time, just that single time was the only time I practiced it. And then on the day, there I am, and everyone was doubting it. Mary was doubting it. The crew's all doubting. I'm doubting it. It's going to work. And some of the crew, again, maybe they were being humorous. Some people thought they'd been a bit harsh, and I've said this in the past, but they were being humorous. They were all saying, no, it's going to turn out like a pile of slop. You might not work again. I'm like, you might not work again. And kind of fit with the humour side of things. So there I was thinking that you can imagine that you're going to be on one of those ITV shows doing, blunders on the television of turning out some slop to Mary Berry on the hillside. And she was stirring the mix at one point. She hands the bowl back to me. Didn't make it into the final cup. She hands the bowl back, and I had to tell her it needed a bit more liquid in there. So yeah, I'm telling her how to make a cake now on the telly. So I'm really ramping up the pressure. And I turned this cake out, and there it was, standing nice and tall. And she said the line I'll never forget: "No sign of a soggy bottom here." So it was very much a proud moment. I believe the first time she's had a cake made for her in the outdoors, and again, one that I think surprised all of us. And to do that on national television for the first time, I've never been on the telly. I've been on subsequently one other time since, but that was certainly a bit like those hills in the early days, quite a baptism of fire.
That's the redemption story right there, though. I think if they made just like a film of your life, that would be it'd be Helen Mirren playing Mary Berry, and I don't know who would play you, but that would be it. That scene, and she's like, "No soggy bottoms here." That's brilliant.
But yeah, no, amazing. Again, to share my story in its entirety on that platform as well, which again, at one point it was, wouldn't share to anyone in the street, wouldn't share in the mirror, to then sharing with friends and family, to then going public on my Instagram, to then getting watched by nearly 2 million people on the BBC like that, and since being re-shown as well, literally sharing my innermost vulnerabilities. That's something I would never imagined I'd do, and really, it's just that sense of purpose for hopefully trying to help somebody else by speaking so openly about it.
That segues quite nicely to a question I actually had. So well done, Chris. I think that we might have done this before, but I was going to ask you about kind of celebrity, about social media, about being in the public eye. There must be pros, there must be cons. I just wanted to ask you about that.
Well, I suppose it depends on what sort of what format you're putting me in that section there, Nat. I mean, I'd certainly say I'm just still some bloke from Carlisle. I haven't certainly reached those heady heights as of yet, but certainly coming across some people in that space now. I mean, I've done some wonderful festivals and events these days where perhaps you are coming across or maybe even mingling with these folks that you're sort of going, oh, I know them from the television. And the next minute there you're having a chat and you're just the same level. But I've never been someone, again, that's ever put anyone on pedestals. I've said before, myself, my own journey, I just think ultimately we are all human beings, really. We've all got our own problems. We've all got day-to-day things going on. And again, even like myself, I would never want to look at someone to look at me and be like, I want to get sober like he did, or me to then go and say, I can help you get sober and preach it, because I'm as close to falling off the wagon as they are half the time. Like, it's not, I'm not sort of, this further down the line. So I've had people in the past who maybe reached out and said that they've listened to my story, they've got sober now, and wanted to sort of thank you and stuff. And you're going, it's nothing I've done, it's all that they've done, sort of thing. And I think some people can get maybe lost in that sort of section, but certainly in that maybe sense, maybe that sense of social media hype and things in there, and get lost in that cycle, that perhaps maybe believe your own hype in a bit, which I think for me, I've just always been someone who's bimbled and bumbled through life a bit, really, and just enjoyed the moments that have come to me since then. But it's certainly nice, obviously, having people come up to you, maybe and speak to certain bits. Doesn't happen everywhere. I'm still able to go into Tesco. I don't get accosted in the street. I can still sneak out the odd pizzas, Chris. They don't say, not cooking tonight, fellow foodie. But no, having people who've heard your story and stuff in there is fantastic to see. Or perhaps people have come and said, oh, we went cooking the other week when we were camping and we've never tried that before. We watched you do that. I mean, when they use the term influencer in social media, well, it's not one I've ever really embraced myself. I suppose it's kind of maybe the job title, I suppose, of some bits, or the public speaker. But if that's the kind of influence I can have, it's more about speaking more openly about mental health and perhaps trying something in the outdoors and a bit more extravagant with your cooking, then I'm more than happy to have that title in that retrospect.
Harrison, I guess maybe this is closing a loop. I guess you said that alcohol was an outlet and a tool for your mental health. How do you feel? How do you see your mental health today? How have you seen that journey, maybe even over the last 7 or so years since you went sober, and how do you feel about it looking forward?
Well, I think, when I was really in the trenches, so to speak, with it, it was so up and down, a very roller coaster like, really, the real highs, real lows. and kind of just hanging on really for it. I think just going through this very destructive path and each day and not really having any foundations to build on. Whereas since I've maybe become more open, since I've sought more help, since I've left some of those vices behind and been able to, it certainly has its ups and downs, but it's just more like sort of gentle valleys now rather than sort of the big mountain crevasses of the past. But personally, mental health, as I think, I said at the start, I still go through moments where I still struggle myself. I think it's learning how to manage it better. I think for a lot of people, these are long-term things, and we all have mental health as well. There are paths that some people maybe have certain afflictions more than others, but we all go through moments of that as well, where I think some can be very short-term, some can be just moments of extreme sadness that we might have through losing a loved one or through certain actions in our life that we have to go through those paths as well. And I think, but the outlets I think are usually the same. So I do think that being outdoors, that active time, has been hugely instrumental for my turnaround, and I think for many other people it can be as well. But perhaps I think if I'm deeply honest on this podcast now, I think I'm not kind of where I want to be myself right now. I'm certainly not back in the days where I was, but I feel like I've got to retrace some of my own steps slightly. But being aware of that, I think, is important as well. So sometimes not beating yourself up too much about these bits. And I still struggle with that harder step sometimes, is just getting out that front door. I think now it's easy to sort of have this, the outdoors persona, and you're out there all the time. And I think I've gone freelance with this work in the last 2 years, and that's caused another huge sort of structure change, where a lot of routine's gone from life and after lockdown. And I do a lot of driving, a lot of traveling around now, which I really enjoy. Really enjoy doing face-to-face events, but it perhaps means that I'm not often out as much as I was in the past as well. And I need to still balance that in, where when work and life become sort of the same, because I'm ultimately me now in terms of doing this as a job or trying to do this as a job, I need to still pencil that time in for myself, and I've perhaps not been doing that quite as much. So I think I need some good time in the hills. I probably need to retrace some of those steps in my own journey. And yeah, still not, practice what I preach, I guess, in a way, and actually sort of, still speak out when I'm going through struggles, I guess, because it's kind of one that I'm battling with since that lockdown period. That food has been for me, so I fell back on a lot more. But sobriety-wise, I feel in a very strong place with that these days. I feel in a very comfortable place speaking about this sort of thing now. So no issues there. But I think it's just appreciating the fact that sometimes we do have those little ups and downs. We're trying to smooth those out as best we can.
Yeah, for sure. As you say, the lockdown set. I mean, no one, I think, particularly benefited, should we say, from lockdown.
Well, I think Michelle Moroney did all right.
Well, I know. I was tempted to drop a few names in there, but I thought best not. I would have gone for the politicians, but yeah, they're all in the same basket. I mean, no one, I don't think, found it particularly easy. But you're right. Even, I have the same. I work from home now, and there's just me. And yeah, you do have to, as you say, takes a bit of time, but try and get better structures. Sometimes I'm better, particularly in the winter when things are a bit calmer. Get into like a coffee shop in Kendal or something once a week, so that I'm just out and about and not in the house by myself all the time, because it's very easy. Today, I've been to the garden to feed the hens, but that's about it. Like the 5 minutes outdoors, the rest of the time I'm inside, and I'm running an outdoor business. And I can, have empathy for what you're saying there, of some of that routine falling away and some of their interactions and stuff like that. So yeah, sometimes it's hard to make it work and to get out and that.
Thanks very much, Harrison. Really interesting to hear your story. Come across as very genuine. Certainly, I think you just got some great stories, and I love the way you tell the stories. I was doing a bit of research before the podcast, and I was just a bit disappointed you didn't use your "couldn't run a bath" line, because that was one of my favorites. But no, just I think I can see why you're so great with people and so fun to be around. And it's great to hear a story such as yours. And I think I know this is glib, but it will give people a lot of inspiration that they can turn their lives around, they can make a difference. And it doesn't need to be so extreme, I don't think. We've all got our different journeys in life. You have had a very extreme journey, I'd say, from drinking 20 pints a day to now cooking a cake for Mary Berry, on TV, and not in quite a short space of time. But for other people, it might not be as extreme as that. It might be they just have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, for example, or whatever it might be. And, something like just getting out in the hills will help them get a better perspective on life. So, no, thank you for coming on the podcast, and you are inspiring people. So, keep going with it, as my dad would say every time I speak to him. Just keep going. I don't really know what it means, but I think for you, keep going is a good motto. Just keep inspiring people.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind. Thank you. I appreciate your words and feedback there. So, no, thank you for the opportunity, and great to speak to you both as always.
Hey, it's Chris here from Adventure Solos, where we help people in their 30s, 40s and 50s to rediscover themselves and meet new people. If you'd like to find out more about Adventure Solos events, visit adventuresolos.com. That's adventuresolos.com, where you're very welcome to stay in touch by joining the mailing list. So adventuresolos.com, and enter your details to sign up to the mailing list.